So, welcome to a new episode of Staying Home with Josh Fox, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. As you have noticed, I am not in Pennsylvania anymore. I'm in the great city of New Orleans in the French Quarter. We had hoped to have our new studio all spiffed out for everybody with the usual ambiance with the dark lighting and all the mood. But we got hit by a giant hurricane that knocked out power to 500,000 people. And it's just an amazing act of nature and God, or whatever you want to call it, that we even actually had an election down here. So I am peeling myself away from watching CNN, as I have been doing for the last, 24 hours straight, to do an episode of the show. We tape, and then we show our show 2 days later. So we're going to have conversations that may exist in the past, but I do think it's important to make a time capsule of this moment of incredible anxiety. So anyway, our new studio is not ready yet because the lights are not on and the internet's not on over there. But we're doing it from home. So you may see a cat wander by at one point in time or another. But we do have our usual Friday lineup with Don Vappy, the song of the week. And we have Christoph Dornemann with our cocktail of the week, which is going to be a kind of quasi-hurricane. And we have Mr. Greg Palast. I would not like to talk to anybody on the face of the earth more than Mr. Greg Palast, because he's the expert on all things electoral. So we're going to have that conversation. We're going to talk about why, even though right now we do not know the results from Georgia, we do not know the results from PA, we do not know the results from Nevada and Arizona. And frankly, it has been an incredibly stressful day. I am having a twitchy eye. Some serious temple pressure, sinus pressure. So if you see me rubbing my eyes, trying to mash my face or whatever, it's because of the enormous stress that everybody knows we've all been going through. So to that end, I would like to bring on Don Vappy, because the man always calms me down, enlightens the world, and brings us the gift of music. So we're here. We're in the same time zone. We're in the same basic city. And Don, let's talk a little bit before we go into the song. What's going on in your mind?
In my part of the world, well, yeah. I was really fortunate about the hurricanes, because it didn't miss me. There was some scary moments, like when the wind started coming from the north. It was like somebody was running on my roof and then running on the side of the walls. It was the weirdest thing, because
the wind was pretty terrifying.
Oh man, it was a lot more than I thought it would. Than I thought it would be. The forecasters have gotten every one of them wrong this year.
Every one of them.
And I mean, I understand, because
that's climate change. That's climate change. People don't know how to predict these things. But yeah, everybody was saying, oh, this one's going to miss us. We actually arrived here the night before the hurricane. We did a whole episode during the hurricane, which I think is one of the great instances of verite television probably in history, because it's basically like the sounds and sights of all of this. And then the eye passed directly over the French Quarter, which was extraordinary. Hasn't happened in 60 years, right? 70 years. And so you could see the band of the storm pass overhead, and blue sky in the middle of the hurricane. And they tell you, of course, they say, don't go out during the eye, because the winds are going to come right back when you hit the other end of the eye. When you hit the other eye wall, they're like, don't go out. You're going to be stuck out there. You're going to get hit by a brick on the head, terracotta tile on your head. But you go out. Every one of my neighbors went out. The whole block was out, right? So we're all outside, and you see birds flying overhead in the eye. And my neighbor told me the birds fly in the eye and track the storm that way, so they keep out of the wind. And it was just unbelievable. You could see a band of the storm over the CBD, the Central Business District, and above us was blue sky. It was one of the most extraordinary and beautiful things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I've been through that a few times.
Yeah, so you guys know. For me, it's brand new.
Generally, man, you try to get out of town if it's right. I mean, I sort of hang if it's a 1. If it's a 2, I'm on the, if I'm stuck. But I mean,
this was a 2.9.
Man, hurricanes, people don't realize hurricanes spawn tornadoes, no matter what rating they are. they can spawn tornadoes, and it's just, oh man, you don't want to be there. Just
So
leave.
let's talk about the election for a second, though. We are on the verge of getting rid of Donald Trump. I feel actually, I'm going to make a prediction here, even though it'll be known by the time I make it, and I might be wrong. I really do think we're going to win Pennsylvania. I thought we were going to win Pennsylvania because usually, and I vote in Pennsylvania, right? Usually in PA, you see wall-to-wall Republican sign, or we saw that with Trump. We saw wall-to-wall Trump signs in 2016 everywhere. Wasn't a Clinton sign to be seen. But in my tiny little corner of PA, you started to see Biden signs cropping up. And I thought, all we need to do is win by a little bit, change this by a little bit, and we've got it. And so we actually, I think, we, in my county, raised Biden's vote by 3% points. If that happens across the state, it's over because we win.
Yeah.
I think that's what's happening. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I hope, man. I got a good feeling about it, but I'm still kind of burned from 2016. So
and nobody wants to be very optimistic. But I'm sure you're going to put this in musical perspective for us, as Greg Palast will be putting this in the vote. I don't know, whatever you want to call this, in the perspective of all of the things electoral. But what do you think? What's going on?
Well, the hurricane slowed me down too. And I thought what I've been doing today is playing music for people that took their minds away from it because of the stress. And
I'm super stressed.
The Saints just played. I heard the French Quarter was packed. People around with no masks on. So, I thought, man, everybody's waiting for this to be over to come down and visit. So this has been the most popular song this week, is Way Down Yonder in New Orleans.
Let's do it.
All right. Way down yonder in New Orleans, in the land of those dreamy scenes, there's a Garden of Eden, you know what I mean. Now Creole babies with flashing eyes speak softly with tender sighs. Now stop, or won't you give your lady fair little smile? Yeah, stop, you'll want to linger there just a little while. We've got heaven right here on earth with all those beautiful queens way down yonder in New Orleans. Bringing me back to my riverboat days, man. Dreamy scenes. There's a Garden of Eden, you know what I mean. Now Creole babies with flashing eyes speak softly with tender sighs. Now stop, or won't you give your lady fair little smile? Yeah, stop, you'll want to linger there just a little while. We've got heaven right here on earth with all those beautiful queens way down yonder in New Orleans. Yeah, way down yonder in way down yonder in way down yonder in New Orleans.
Oh man. It never ceases to bring a smile and wake us all up. And I see you the minute Greg Palast comes on and he hears you sing. He's in the groove. So thank you, Don. We'll be right back. This is Staying Home with Josh Fox, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal, coming to you from New Orleans in my apartment, which is not where I was supposed to be, but our studio does not have power yet and it doesn't have internet yet. So we're going to be working on that for very, very soon. We'll be right back with Mr. Greg Palast. This is Staying Home with Josh Fox, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal, coming to you from New Orleans. So I was texting with this man at 3 o'clock in the morning last night. At least it was 3 o'clock for me. It was probably 1 o'clock for you. I don't know if you're in LA, Greg.
Yeah, I'm in LA. Yeah, we were actually about 4 o'clock for you to be. I don't want to tell your mother that.
Well, maybe it was
that late.
I don't even know, but it was just before Wisconsin kicked in, and it was the darkest moment before the dawn, right? It was like rough. It was a rough day. We were like staring down the barrel of 4 more years of Donald Trump, and all of a sudden Wisconsin, boom, and then the next morning Michigan, and we're right back in it, and it's looking very, we're taping this on Wednesday night to broadcast on Friday night. So we're gonna have to project ourselves in the future. What we're gonna do first is project ourselves into the past, right? Because Greg, you've been talking about the mayhem that's happening right now for a long time. And
about 20 years.
Yeah, about 20 years, right. But I remember sitting there reading how George Bush stole the best democracy money can buy, how George Bush stole 2000. And I never thought that I would be on television with you talking about the election as it's unfolding. So this is like a Walter Mitty boyhood fantasy for me. But beyond that, talk about what you predicted to happen. And Georgia at this moment is very, very, very close and trending towards Biden, right? The New York Times is saying that Biden is going to pull it out in Georgia. But talk to us first about the article that you just wrote and what has happened over the course of the last 2 years.
Okay, first of all, if you go to truthout.org or gregpalast.com, you're going to see an article about how this near steal, and it still may be stolen. Remember, this is a theft in progress as we're speaking Wednesday, and it'll probably continue through Friday. We are talking about something that's been in progress for at least 2 years. That is, there's been a whole program by GOP functionaries, not Donald Trump. I wrote a book called How Trump Stole 2020. And which I wrote, by the way, months ago, anticipating this. So it's not like this is a surprise to me. I wrote the book. I wrote it already. I figured I'm always tired, frankly, Josh, of writing these books like The Best Democracy Money Can Buy about the theft of the election in 2000, Arm House, the theft of the election in 2004. And then I did the film Best Democracy about how Donald Trump would win in 2016.
Really fun.
You were at the opening, and everyone there was saying, come on, Palast. Hillary's already inaugurated. We bought our dresses for the party, for the inaugural party. We got our high heels that we just bought. But the balloons didn't drop. I told you. And I told you, so this time I'm tired of doing the stuff after the election. So I wrote the book, How Trump Stole 2020 before. So maybe it uses a warning instead of a prediction. So here's the key thing.
Don't you think, though, that all of your work for the last 20 years is actually now in the mainstream? It's coming into fruition. People are really looking at this in a very different way. See, Donald Trump is coming out and he's like a complete moron because he's like, they're stealing it. If you can imagine George Bush doing the same thing back in 2000, he would have been telegraphing their plan.
Yeah, in fact,
in many ways, there's so much more information, and I have to credit you for 20 years of drumming this into people's heads that this was possible. So I think you should take a little bit of credit for that.
Oh, thank you. But what I want to do is tell people how they have done it before, how they're trying to do it again now, and where this comes from. And by the way, there's no comfort if Biden does pull it out, which he might do right at 270. But for example, in Georgia, you said, Biden will pull it out in Georgia. Well, he doesn't need Georgia. He won Georgia, but here's the other problem. Jon Ossoff, the Senate candidate, he kicked ass. He won. He will not become a senator. Okay, we have this problem all over the nation where down ballot races have been thrown, and people all they care about is, oh, it's Biden, Biden, Biden. Well, excuse me. Now we don't have Donald Trump didn't necessarily lose. Even if he leaves office, he's left us with Mitch McConnell. Okay, so now here's what's going on. There are two big tricks. There are many big tricks. I talk in How Trump Stole 2020 about the 12 ways to steal an election. The two big ones here, the purge and the post. Now, the purge. Let's start with that. I won't make it too much of a lecture. You notice there's no chalkboard here. I threw that away. But what has not been really reported?
Nightmares of John King pointing at my head in the middle of the night. Like this.
It's the PT post-King traumatic disorder.
John King.
Yeah,
it's happening to me right now. Like I'm having. So what happened as we speak. Go ahead.
All over the country, we call it the Big Purge. In Georgia, I can tell you that 198,351 voters were illegally removed from the voter rolls by the GOP hack who's the Secretary of State, a guy named Brad Raffin's purge.
Say that number again.
100. I'm not guessing. You can tell by the exact number. 198,321, just short of 200,000 voters. And by the way, it did get a mention on CNN that 200,000 voters were illegally removed from the voter rolls in Georgia. They just said it like that, like, oh, 200,000. It wasn't close in Georgia for Biden or Ossoff or Warnock because there were two senatorial races on the ballot. So what's going on here? How do I know these people were wrongly removed? And that's just Georgia. That report was issued by the ACLU of Georgia, the report I did. Now, what do we find? They said, oh, people have moved. You know, this is what the GOP's new gimmick, the movers, they call them movers. And they're saying this is the fraudulent illegal voters. Now, as you know, if you don't live in Atlanta, you can't vote in Atlanta. It's a crime. Okay, that's fine. And so who are these criminals? Well, if you go to gregpalast.com, you'll see a little 14-minute film. There's a 1-minute version too for those of you with.
We've actually shown this film.
Yes. So there's a 14-minute version now hosted by Leonardo DiCaprio at his Instagram storybook page. Since I don't know how to use Instagram, I go to gregpalast.com.
So you just call up Leo and say, just do it for me.
Yeah, just call Leo and just say, hey, can you just flick it on for me? Yeah, well, he's got to do a lot of flicking. 6 million people have seen it. But here's the trick. You'll get to meet one of these criminals, the first criminal, Christine Jordan. Who is Christine Jordan? 50 years she's been voting at the same polling station. I was there in Atlanta. I filmed her. Granddaughter's hysterical in tears. I go back to her house. Remember, these are movers. This is the house they said that she moved out of. She's been living there almost a century. There's a picture of Martin Luther King on the wall. I said, is this you, Dr. King? She says, that's my cousin. He came here every Sunday for dinner after church. There's pictures of them at the church. That didn't mean anything to the secretary. I took that to the Secretary of State, the Republican Secretary of State. And at the time, a guy named Brian Kemp. Now, Brian Kemp, he's removing voters from the voter rolls while he's running for governor.
I'm getting bent out of shape as you speak.
And that's just Georgia. Okay, so they removed Martin Luther King's cousin. Now, she has to admit something. I did get her to admit that she was attempting to vote while black. Then I go and do the review of the purge list, a purge that they're planning to do in Wisconsin. And by the way, I'm going to give you a very happy ending to this story.
I like that.
So in Wisconsin, they were going to remove 150,000 voters. Who are these voters? Again, they're movers, okay? They got this mover list from the Pew Charitable Trust, by the way. Those nice liberals. Anyway, they got this list. But our experts went through it. You have to understand when I say our experts. Who are experts? Well, who knows where you live? The post office. Believe it or not, you can hire the post office, which we did. We hired the post office. We also hired Amazon, eBay, Google experts to go in, and they know exactly where you were last Thursday, by the way. And they know
where we are right now.
They know where you are. Forget it. They use 1,700 dynamic data points to know exactly what you ordered for lunch today, and I kid you not. And they said, look, this list is phony. They
don't know because I buried my lunch in 1979 in the backyard over here, and I just dug it up. So there's no data on that.
Okay, way off the grid. It's very muddy, but it's way off the
It
grid.
was my astronaut ice cream.
Yeah,
that
so
I bought in the Smithsonian.
like Tang, right? So so we found out. Okay, so they said who moved, and these guys said no, about 100,000 people, and we can give you the names and addresses have not moved. They're right where they registered to vote. But what's going on here? So we went to one, Sequana Taylor. We said, Sequana, you're registered in Milwaukee. And you don't live in Milwaukee. She says, I live in Milwaukee. I said, prove it. She says, well, look at the building behind me. See the name on the wall? She is a Milwaukee County supervisor. But once again, she was guilty of voting while black. And that's what they had to eliminate. So we actually went through and we worked with some great statisticians, and we took the names of the voters illegally that they were going to remove, and then we compared them to their race. And guess what? Almost every wrongly targeted person was either black or a student in Madison, and they were removing these voters. But here's the happy news. The only reason you're not suicidal tonight, my friend,
Who's to say?
You're listening and you're playing banjo music,
Mm-hmm.
is that Biden has taken Wisconsin. Now, they're going to try to reverse it. We can talk about that. But Biden has taken Wisconsin. Why? He took it by a smidge, by about 21,000, 22,000 votes so far, officially.
Right.
No way would he have done that if they'd done that purge. You know that the state of
So
Wisconsin,
you guys helped reverse the purge.
we stopped it before they implemented. Now, of course, the Republican state legislature went berserk, and they went to court and they said, you can't, the law says you have to remove these voters. And the new Democratic administration, plus, by the way, crucial, this would not have happened except for the Lieutenant Governor, Mandela Barnes.
But so in Georgia, you pointing out that almost 200,000 people were disenfranchised. Was that stopped?
Yep.
We have to take a break for a second. This is Staying Home, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. We're talking about the election with Greg Palast. We'll be right back. This is Staying Home, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. We're talking about the election with Greg Palast. Greg, so in Georgia, 200,000 people?
200,000 illegally removed. Now, that's the beginning.
And did they not get to vote? Or what happened? Do we know?
Well, here's what we did. We put on a massive campaign working with Black Voters Matter to get thousands of people re-registered, calling people, sending them really dramatic postcards, and doing a whole media campaign. We created a site, funded by the DiCaprio family, called SaveMyVote2020.org, where you could look up and see if you've been purged and re-register. The problem is, by the time CNN reported the votes missing, it was too late to re-register. But here's the deal. In Wisconsin, we stopped the purge. Then we went to Michigan and said, look, you've got 300,000 people you've purged. The Democrats have just taken over. Your Republican predecessors used these cockamamie reasons to remove 300,000 voters. Almost everyone's in Detroit. What color is Motown? And the Democratic Party, now remember, the Democratic Party in Wisconsin under Mandela Barnes said, we're not going to purge these voters. In Michigan, the purge had already happened, but the Democrats would not reverse it. In fact, they asked me, don't talk about it. I said, you're discouraging voters. I said, well, being removed from the voter rolls is kind of discouraging. You can't vote. Yes. So we still put out the word. We ran a campaign anyway.
So that's the purge.
Yeah.
But
that's the purge.
Let me ask you this question. How, in your estimation, is this different from the year 2000? Because it seems to me that there are 5 or 6 states, maybe even, right, that are going to be that Florida state, right? It could be Nevada, it could be Arizona, it could be PA, right? It could be Georgia. And it doesn't seem possible for that same scenario where it's just one state with your brother in charge of it to transpire. Tell us a little bit about how this is different than the year 2000.
Well, number one, it's gone viral, and I,
right.
So it started out in Florida. Florida was the first state, by the way, to computerize its voter rolls, and you had Catherine Harris, Cruella de Vil, the Republican Secretary of State, who is also running Bush's campaign while she's in charge of the vote. So she figured out that if you computerize the voter rolls with a flick of a switch, you can remove tens of thousands, and she did. She removed 58,000 black men, saying that they were felons. Well, of course. No, not one. When I was working for BBC, I uncovered the list. Not one was an illegal voter. They were all, again, guilty of voting while black.
So you have said that we
Yeah.
should overwhelm the steal.
Yes. And
Is that what's happened?
Yes. And I have to say, one, people have overwhelmed the steal. In Michigan, we got a lot of people registered on the day, which you can do in Michigan by warning people to bring the ID, same in Wisconsin. In Georgia, we had a massive campaign, Black Voters Matter. Applause to Latasha Brown and Cliff Albright for, I can tell you that campaign was difficult, expensive, and brutal, and it may result in flipping that state. But here's the thing. That was just one trick. Now we move to we go from the purge to the post.
Okay.
And this is where it gets tragic and nasty. And here, while I had a happy ending on the purge story, kinda, it's still going on, but on the postal story, that story ain't been written yet. And what I mean, now I've warned before on this program in my book, How Trump Stole 2020. I looked up an MIT study. So how many votes get thrown out? We never discuss that in America. We never discuss votes that don't get counted. So according to MIT, 22%, that's 1 in 5 mail-in ballots, never get counted. It's like, what? In fact, even the author at the end had to put in a little, for a professor, it was a pretty heavy comment. He says, there'd be a lot of complaints if 1 in 5 ballots in your precinct were just thrown in the garbage, but we accept it for mail-in ballots. About half of those that are lost because they were never received. They're never mailed out, or they're mailed late. I can't tell you, they're talking about whether
a whole case about all these votes that were trying to get swept and brought to the polls by a federal judge.
Yes. So the problem is well, first of all, the ballots don't get to the voter in time.
Right.
And that's why when Trump is trying to cut off the count, you have to understand some people, it's not like they were hanging out with their ballots, said, oh, I'll just wait till election day to get to mail this thing in. They didn't get them. Okay, that's number one. Number two, about one in 12 mail-in ballots is challenged and thrown out. What do you mean challenged? Only in America. You don't see this in France. You don't see this in England or Italy. In civilization, you don't challenge ballots that have been cast by your citizens. Here we do. So, for example, are you ready for this? In DeKalb County, now DeKalb is only a fraction of Atlanta. There are 6 counties that make up Atlanta. Right. DeKalb is one part of the city.
Joe Biden winning DeKalb by about 85%.
And Biden's winning by about 85% of the votes that are counted. Guess what? They're going to throw out 40,000 mail-in ballots in DeKalb. 40,000 because someone has challenged their signatures. Now, are there 40,000?
Well, that's what's happened in elections past.
Yes.
And how do you prevent that this time?
Well, here's the thing. When you talk about what's the difference between prior years where it's been ugly and bad and hundreds of thousands of votes have been, mail-in votes have been lost, overwhelmingly, again, young people's votes, voters of color who, they are losing their votes because they get challenged because they know how people vote in these precincts. So you've had these mass challenges before. We just haven't talked about it. We've lost 1 million mail-in ballots before. No one talks about it. But now, okay, in 2016, we had 141,000 mail-in ballots thrown in the garbage. Now, I'm telling you, Hillary Clinton's victory was in that garbage can.
But how do we prevent that this time? Because
now it's worse.
We're going to get to a point, it seems to me, and this is projecting into Friday, right? That we may have already reached that point by the time this is broadcast, that Biden is officially declared the winner, right? Because he's won in Nevada and he's won in Arizona, or he's won in PA, and he's won in Georgia, let's say. And the Trump campaign goes in, and they're trying to now swim upstream. What happens in that process, and how do we as citizens stop it?
I've been there, done that. Al Gore was the press announced that Al Gore had won. They called every network called Florida
on the night. They did
on the night,
yeah,
because the ballots were in. It was pretty clear, and then the game started. And, Bush's family, they're just grinning there. They talked to good old Jeb, and they began the process of disqualifying votes and not counting votes. Now, you have to understand that when they call these things, remember there are all these outstanding ballots. Plus, we have ballots which can't be counted by machines. In Florida, we made fun of hanging chads. It meant a piece of paper stuck to the back of the ballot, but it's still a ballot. Someone voted, someone punched a hole next to Al Gore's name. But so there's a machine that can read those ballots called the human eyeball. So they started a hand count. Now, here's the deal. Here's the deal. First of all, when you say it's called, it's not over with. The only call that counts under the United States Constitution, that piece of crap, and we'll discuss that another day. Under Article 2 of this bogus document called the U.S. Constitution, you don't have a vote in picking the president. Voters have nothing to do with choosing the president. It's not in the Constitution. And by the way, you don't even get to choose the electors. It's right. The electors are chosen by your state legislature. They have absolute 100% control over.
So the state legislatures could actually fight this?
And that's what people
do
not know or rarely remember, except for experts on Florida back in 2000, which is controlling this whole thing. Because, by the way, it's the same set of lawyers that Trump is using that Bush used, the same set of lawyers. But 3 of them were not available for him to hire because they're on the Supreme Court. Right. Amy Covid Barrett, John Roberts, Brett Kavanaugh. These 3 little scamps were all lawyers for George Bush and gave him the election. Now, what happens? So the legislature in Florida literally passed a law saying only the Bush electors will be accepted, no matter what the count is, including because the Florida Supreme Court said, count all the votes. Bush won by 527 votes, but there are 178,000 votes.
But that was one state. I'm just going to continue to play devil's advocate because I don't want to crawl up in the corner and start dying. But because in 5 states, with all of this attention on the process, let's get to it in a moment. This is Staying Home, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. We're talking about the election with Greg Palast. We'll be right back. This is Staying Home, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. I'm with Greg Palast. So just in a moment, what do citizens need to do to be sensitive to after they listen to this program? And we are very close to this Biden victory. What do we need to do now that we've done all the things about overwhelming the Steele and using the ballot condom and making sure that we've got our votes counted? What is the next piece of this game? Great.
Okay. Would someone donate a spine to the Democratic Party? It's an emergency procedure is needed so that they don't concede, that they demand that every vote be counted, right. And which they have not done. Okay, they've said it, but let's see them do it. And one of the things I'm very concerned about is an attempt to stop the count of the vote, because that's what they did in Florida. They will try to stop the counts of the votes that are coming in now, the mail-in ballots. And we have huge, we're talking about 80 million mail-in ballots. We still have millions outstanding that have to be counted. There are millions in dispute. We're not discussing that. It's not on cable TV. But Trump's lawyers know, don't count those ballots and begin to challenge the ballots that have been counted. Scotch tape, red pen instead of a blue pen, blah, blah, blah. You can knock out thousands, hundreds of thousands. You can easily knock out 1 million votes, especially if you say no votes after this date. I'm very concerned that that's a trick that the court can pull. And, I'm not guaranteeing it. But we've had, we basically the court picked a president that was not elected by the people in 2000. And the Democratic Party said, oh, well, at least it's a peaceful transition of power. I didn't know a coup d'etat was considered peaceful transition of power just because no one got their brains blown out. If only someone had blown in some brains into Al Gore, maybe we would have had a different outcome.
Greg, we're going to keep checking back with you as this transpires. I have a feeling we're going to be dealing with this for a week or 2, maybe longer. So please come back and we'll continue to discuss it. Okay, Greg?
Yep. Stay alive till then.
I'll do.
And go to gregpalast.com if you want to read my continuing investigations and reports, and check out that film, The Purged.
Okay. Thank you. Greg Palast, always essential information about the election and about all things American. Thanks, Greg. We'll see
You're welcome.
Soon, or maybe hopefully I don't know, never again. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Let's talk about something else next time.
Yeah, well, we'll be roomies at Guantanamo, so it'll be cool.
There, that I'm
you
looking
later.
forward to, actually.
Bring your banjo.
All right, I will, for sure. Bye. Okay, so it's Friday night. We are here for my favorite segment, and I have my jacket. Don't worry. I know everybody is follows the fashion on this show. Christoph and I, for the first time on Staying Home, are in the same city.
Yeah,
And
what's going on?
he's just across town in Mid-City. I'm in the French Quarter. And I do have my jacket. And we are going to have a special treat. We're going to forget about the election for a minute and focus on climate change. Because both are good reasons to drink. Anyway, Christoph, you look well.
Thank you. Hey, it's been a wild ride. I don't know.
I know. We're both kind of in that moment. Like, I'm like, I may only have a sip of this drink because I think
after yesterday,
last night was rough. But I want to make it. So tell us what we're doing.
Yeah, we're gonna do. It's essentially just a rum punch, but it's a good way if you want to make something as close to a hurricane, but you can't get passion fruit, anything fancy.
Like
just
a fake hurricane.
Rum punch. So yeah, we're gonna do sort of like a mock hurricane rum punch.
Thank God we had
celebratory.
I was hoping that we would have a fake hurricane last week, but in fact we had a very real hurricane.
Yeah.
But we'll have the sort of end of the hurricane season, hopefully hurricane.
Yeah, this is gonna be to send it all away, and we can move on and hopefully celebrate very soon a transition in our world. So we'll see about that. Okay. All right. You have your lime juice. I have
a lime, and I also have this lime juice, which is better.
There you go. Yeah, that's better. That's the way to go. You want the fresh stuff.
The fresh lime. That's what I thought.
We have grenadine.
I do have grenadine.
For those unaware, although I think you have the bottled stuff, which is fine.
I have this one. I know that you said we should be making our own grenadine. How would one do that?
So it's actually pretty easy. It's pomegranate syrup. That's what grenadine is. Hence,
pomegranate syrup?
Yeah, grenadine. Think about Granada. Granada in Spanish is pomegranate. Grenadine is pomegranate. So grenadine is pomegranate syrup. So the easiest way is to go buy a bottle of pomegranate juice, and you mix it with sugar, equal parts. And if you want to add a little bit of orange flower water, that's kind of the little secret sauce. But it's easy.
Orange flower water.
Yeah.
Wow.
That
sounds extraordinary. That sounds way better than this weird, like, syrupy.
Yeah.
I knew grenadine must be special because it has such a special name.
Yeah.
Grenadine.
Well, and it's in a lot of
it sounds like a fairy tale princess. Grenadine was liberated from the castle by Prince Tequila or something.
I was going to say Kumquat or something like that.
Prince Kumquat, my favorite of all the princes.
All right.
Okay, so I've just put how much lime?
I'm going to do half an ounce of lime juice.
I just did that.
There we go. And then I'm going to do half an ounce of grenadine.
Half an ounce of grenadine.
And then we have our orange juice. I'll do like 3/4. You can do pineapple juice, orange juice.
How about grapefruit juice? No?
That sounds delicious. Do it. Do it. Go for it.
I have this ruby red grapefruit juice cocktail. How much of that?
There you go. 3/4 ounces.
Okay.
It's kind of to taste.
It's all about the creativity of creating cocktails at home, which, I often have, made some mutations or transformations or variations, I should say, of your cocktails. And they're all just great. So you don't have to be a purist, is what I'm saying.
Well, no, definitely don't be a purist. But once you get there's kind of like little formulas. And once you figure out those formulas, you'll find yourself being able to make more and more drinks without having to, look it up. And you'll just think, well, that last time I made this way. Let's try it like that. And that's how you learn how to bartend, really. Yeah. All right. So traditionally, it's going to be a blend of white and dark rum. Whatever you have available is fine.
I just have the regular old quart bottle bargain basement rum.
There you go. That's perfect.
For parties.
2 ounces of that. I'm going to do some overproof in mine as a celebratory step, maybe. We'll see. And then at this point now, you have the bottled grenadine, so I think you're good. I will add just a touch of raw sugar syrup because my grenadine is pretty tart. Since it's
my grenadine is very syrupy, so I'm going to leave that out.
Yeah, so I would just stick with what you got. And honestly, at that point, you're good to go.
All right. So do we shake this one up? Yes?
Oh, yeah. Lots of juice, lots of stuff. You shake it up for sure.
Put that ice into the shaker thing. Shaken.
All right. And I'm going to use this classic hurricane glass, which is actually where the name came from.
Oh, the big glass. Oh, I have this glass.
That works.
So you put the ice in with it?
Yeah, I just kind of dump it as I do the very classy dirty dunk. I'll throw a little extra ice in there.
I'm just going to put in some of the ice, but not all of the ice I have in here. So how did this drink get originated? Is this a New Orleans drink as well? Or is this a Caribbean
So
drink?
the hurricane itself is a New Orleans drink and originally has passion fruit. That's what we're missing today.
Oh,
and it was really created by rum was so cheap and rum was seen as like a low class thing to drink. Scotch was there was a limit on how much whiskey and Scotch were available. And the founder of Pat O'Brien's, which is on Bourbon Street, knew that he could get a lot of cheap rum and there was too much of it. So they had the bartender come up with a sort of tropical punch to use the rum, and that ended up becoming what we now know as the Hurricane, which honestly is probably one of the most well-known drinks in the country, even if it is usually ruined or made in a way that I wouldn't like to make it. But yeah, it's actually would technically be a classic cocktail because it's from the 40s. So.
All right, here it is. Let's taste
what
it.
we're doing with this right now. It's a little on the sweet side, to be honest, but
great. I love it.
But
and people, we've got to understand. Stay calm. Stay calm. No violence. I mean, go into the street and protest, but protest with a sense of dignity and peacefulness. That's what we need. If it comes down to that, we have to protect our democracy, but we also have to protect our dignity right now. And there are people out there who will be violent if they're provoked. And they're going to be violent no matter what. It is up to us not to be violent in return. So relax, take a deep breath. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. Cheers.
Cheers.
See you tomorrow.
Cheers.
TYT just crossed 14 billion views. Yes, that's the world population, almost times 2. And we have over 19 million subscribers. Too strong. I love you guys. Look, we're not backed by billionaires like other mainstream media outlets or the right-wing outlets that are almost all backed by them. We're able to press on and continue our coverage because of you guys. Your small dollar donations to our fundraising campaign at tyt.com/go have a huge impact. And you know what they do? They create real change. Contributions of any amount supports our ability to continue to tell stories that often don't get covered by the likes of MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News. With your support, we're the 4th news network, and you know we keep it real. No matter how large or small the contribution, you help us beat the billionaires and all the other media outlets by going to tyt.com/go.
All right, well, the Young Turks special election day coverage dropping.
An amazing power panel.
Look at this panel. You want to talk about power?
Like a smart Destiny's Child.
We're all too strong.
We start a revolution. Yes, another one.
Aren't you excited?
Wow.
And then the best fighters in the country are right there on this.
panel with the obvious exception of John.
in a lot of ways.
Why is he lying? Because these are acts that you can commit with impunity.
Most of us are usually in boxer shorts underneath.
I went with the pants today.
This is the first ever power panel with Donald Trump as president.
We have elected the top Twitter troll in the country.
We have to stop pretending that race is not an issue in this country.
Now keep in mind, racism had gone away until Barack Obama brought it back.
That's right. They want to protect life so much that they want to ensure that insurance companies don't cover your maternity care.
I've been a fan of TYT, I believe, for the last 6 years.
5 years.
3 years now. 7 years.
4 years now.
2.5 years. I just started because she got me into it.
My boyfriend actually watches it every morning and every night, so I kind of just started watching it with him, and I love it. I mean, it's the only way that I find my news.
Looking through YouTube, looking for political shows that look cool.
I came across a very angry rant from Cenk, and that's when I knew.
So I was immediately in love with the show.
And then I haven't missed a live show since then.
10 times a day, I watched the show in the morning.
Whenever I had a bad day at high school, Young Turks.
Man, Cenk is just so blunt and honest, and I love the honesty, and there's no BS behind the news, and they just tell everything like it is.
There's nobody censoring them. There's nobody there to say you can't do this, you can't say that.
That feel of authenticity makes it seem like what they're saying is true.
I feel like I get the real story from the Young Turks.
I am TYT.
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 Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, that's Anna.
Jumping music, slick DJs, fog machines, and laser rays. Look out weekends, cause here I come. Because weekends were made for fun. Look out weekend, cause here I come. Because weekends were made for fun, fun, fun. I work hard every day. It's all work and no play. With the boss on my back, he don't give me any slack. I sit down, I daydream of how my weekend's gonna be.
Girl, I wish you would.
Welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Ugranic is sparing with you guys on election week. I can't believe it's Friday night. It feels like it's Tuesday and I've lived the longest day of my life. I'm gonna give you updates here on where we are. But you know, we got on here, first of all, I got on at 6 in the morning here on the West Coast. Then we got on here all together, me and John, then me and Anna at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And we told you all the relevant news of the day. And then the news stopped as soon as we got off air. I don't know if they were trying to do us a favor. And the news is about to pick back up because Biden is gonna speak soon. And there's some chance that now that we're getting close to prime time, the ratings will be high enough for the networks to call this election, which I called it 6 a.m. Pacific because there's overwhelming evidence that it is over. So I don't know if they're waiting because they're cowards and worried about what Trump's gonna say about them, or if they're waiting because they just wanna get more money by going in prime time. We deliver the news to you when we have the news and not when it's convenient or to Republicans or to corporate media. So Decision Desk HQ also called it in the mornings about the same time that I did. And now look, guys, I was clear with you in the morning, I'll be clear here. We don't have a room full of statisticians in the back, so I'm not saying my call is an official call, etc., right? But so what am I basing it on? And I'll clarify in terms of where we are right now. There's 4 states that are at play here. North Carolina hasn't moved at all. I don't know what they're doing. They're leaning Trump, so nobody talks about North Carolina. Alaska apparently is gonna take however long they're gonna take, it doesn't matter. It's very, very, very likely Trump, right? So if they're Trump, it doesn't matter because Trump has to pick up almost all of these states, right? So the 4 relevant states, and I'll go in order for you guys. We have Georgia. In the morning, Biden took a lead in Georgia. He has maintained and grown that lead. In fact, as it stands now, it's at 4,185 votes. Now that's not a lot, and so they haven't done counting. We don't know if Biden's lead will be larger by the end. It's mainly Democratic districts, but there's some military ballots as well. So the Trump team has asked for a recount there, and then the government of Georgia, which is all Republican governor,
legislature, etc., say they're going to do a recount, no problem. Okay, we believe in recounts. We're not hypocrites. We're principled about it. You could announce who won the count, and then we could have a recount, and nothing wrong with that. But they're not even saying that. Well, we're going to have a recount of who won. So who won? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Biden has a 4,000 vote lead. Okay, I'm going in order of priority. Okay, and Georgia's at the bottom. So Biden very likely won Georgia. He won. It looks like he won the first count. We'll see if there's a recount. Then you go to Arizona. Okay, Arizona, there was outstanding Republican districts, so we weren't sure. A lot of those came in. They didn't come in for Trump in large enough numbers to overcome Biden's lead. So every person on air agrees Arizona is going to go to Biden. The networks say, I'll give the exception of Fox News, who called it immediately, and Associated Press, who also called it what feels like years ago. And Associated Press is, the oldest and most trusted news establishment in the country. Everybody else is like, I don't know, but Trump yelled at Fox News a lot, so we're not going to call that one. Okay, if you want to stretch and say, well, there's still Republican counties, maybe some sort of miraculous percentages could happen in those areas. Fine. Although again, I don't know what's taking so long in each one of these states to do a simple count. All right, then we move up to Nevada. There's only heavily Democratic districts left. And Biden has a very comfortable 1.6 lead. It's over a 20,000 vote lead in Nevada. There's no question that Biden has won Nevada. No one disputes that Biden has won Nevada. Still not calling it. What earthly reason is there not to call Nevada? So I hope they make more money in prime time or whatever their motive is. If they think they're going to appease Trump, the longer you wait, the more Trump gets to say, oh, it's in doubt. It's in doubt and fraud and this, and I got to take it to the courts. Look, even the networks wouldn't call it. They weren't sure. What's there not to be sure about? So, and then, guys, it's publicly available, the areas that are not yet in with their full count. They're heavily Democratic areas. He has a 1.6% lead. There's no magic to it, okay? There's no secret ballots waiting somewhere. There are no Democratic areas, Democratically heavy areas anywhere in the country that have magically gone for Trump. All right, let's continue to Pennsylvania. To Pennsylvania. So Biden took the lead there this morning. He has built on that lead, and now he has over 14,000 vote lead with 96% reporting. The remaining areas are heavily Democratic. They're so heavily Democratic that the Republicans are complaining that they're continuing to count in those areas. So where are your areas that are going to come in the last 4% and overturn the lead? In fact, you were just chanting stop the count in Pennsylvania earlier. So do you want him to stop the count? Because now Biden's leading. Oh no, you don't want him to stop the count. You want the count to keep going. In fact, including in Pennsylvania, they want to recount. They went from stop the count to keep counting to count twice, okay? And yet the networks have still not called it. So if they have a good reason, and now they're setting out there guys like Kornacki to, look, what it feels like to me is to pretend there's a legitimate reason to wait, which then doubly helps Trump's cause. On MSNBC, I would never ever tell them to say that it's true if it's not true, or if they're not sure that it's not true. But when you're weirdly defending Trump for no reason, when every expert says it's obviously over, there's something wrong with you. So you should explain what's wrong with you. Anyway, so that's why we started the day jubilant, and now we're frustrated. So, but don't worry, guys, we're almost in prime time. So, and if Biden's going to speak, he might wait for the networks to call it and then speak, and then you'll have a nice TV moment. I can't say for sure why they're holding. I'm not in their decision desk headquarters in these different networks, but I've never seen an election, Republican or Democrat, where someone has a lead, only areas left are for their party, and they don't call it. I've never seen it.
Do you think that they're just trying to, like, as much as possible, postpone the inevitable violence that will be done by Trump supporters? Like, I don't get it either, to be honest.
I don't know what that means. Like, they say, oh, we want to be doubly sure. Well, how many times? It was when we got off the air this morning. That was on the Pacific time. Was around 9:40, right? So now here we are, Pacific time, 3:10ish, right? So you've had hours and hours and hours to redo the math. You must have quadruple checked it by now. So what are we missing? That we're not missing anything. And waiting does not help if you're concerned about violence. It makes it worse. Now we're gonna go to nighttime with these lunatics roaming around. We're gonna tell you a story a little bit later about how some terrorists showed up for Trump in Philly. How long are you gonna wait? And you think you're helping? Nah. Now they're losing every excuse they have. And in the morning I was frustrated. I shared that frustration near the end of the broadcast, and that was 6-7 hours ago, right? And some people said on Twitter when I shared that on Twitter, oh, Cenk, don't be impatient. Later, Joe Scarborough's like, what are we waiting for? Even Joe Scarborough, right? And person after person, what are we waiting for? So tell us what we're waiting for. Nope, not gonna tell you. But we'll tell you when the ratings are great. I really don't know if that's why. But I can't, I'm stretching to find a real reason and I can't find it. If they have one, they should. CNN was yelling at Fox News this morning. You better get your anchors to say that Joe Biden won the election, you know? Well, wait, you're not saying Joe Biden won the election. What the hell are you talking about? So, and they've given no explanation at all. So anyway, that's the current state in terms of the vote and the unwillingness of the media for some reason, or most of the media, to admit the super obvious. But we do have a show that is both fun at times, as you'll see. It actually is two of my favorite political quotes of all time just happened. They're awesome and hilarious. One is from a Democrat, one's from a Republican. You'll enjoy those. And then obviously we have serious stories like this. And I wish I had more updates for you. I'll give you one last update because the updates are so tiny. And by the way, I also, for Pennsylvania and Arizona, etc., like you were reporting all these counts throughout the night and throughout the morning. There's no court order for you to not count. I just don't understand, and they're not giving any explanations. I'm checking the news every day, every minute, right? So what is the explanation for a magical 7-hour pause for vote results or for calling this election? So what I'm worried about, guys, is that every minute we wait, the right wing becomes more convinced that there's something funny going on, that there's a trick. And every minute the Republican politicians go, maybe they're gonna let us get away with it. Maybe we should back Trump in trying to steal this election, because it turns out both Democrats, the media, and everybody, we can read the numbers. This election's over. Why aren't they calling? Maybe they're gonna let us steal it. So it's such a, I don't know if it's a strategy, but if it is, it's a disastrous strategy.
It is a disastrous strategy, and I will note that people are not gonna take that. If for any reason there is indication that Trump is gonna try to steal this election, and it's not just stealing the election, it's a coup. If he tries to perform a coup in the United States, we will take action, nonviolent action, but it will challenge those in positions of power. ChooseDemocracy.us, ChooseDemocracy.us. There's a lot of organizing going on behind the scenes in the event that Donald Trump tries to do that. And yeah, I think people are a little more prepared this time around than anything. But let me tell you who has not been on Donald Trump's side as he spouts these unfounded claims of election fraud, rigging, stealing, all this nonsense that he has failed to provide any evidence of. That's our next story, so let's talk about it.
And I'm sorry, before you go to that, and you're right, we're gonna go to that in 1 second. I just promised a small update. Small update is when you're hearing nonsense from the Republicans about, oh my God, you know, there's these late arriving ballots in Pennsylvania. First of all, the law in Pennsylvania is if it's postmarked by November 3rd, you're allowed to receive them after November 3rd. And that already went through the whole court system, and the Supreme Court said it's fine. But even so, they have put those ballots aside. It is not in the current count. So they've gone out of their way to not report those numbers. So don't believe any Republican lies about that. Okay, that's your small update. And let's go to and in fact, we'll talk about some of that in the courts story you're about to do.
Well, as Donald Trump handcuffs himself to the Resolute desk and pretends as though there was election fraud, which led to Joe Biden winning over Trump. Of course, that's unfounded, no evidence of that. Luckily, there have been some Republicans who have come out to essentially disagree with Trump and say that there's no evidence of election fraud. So let me be clear. We've announced here at TYT that Joe Biden is the president-elect. He has won this election fair and square. And here is what Representative Adam Kinzinger had to say about it. He says, if you have legit concerns about fraud, present evidence and take it to court. Stop spreading debunked misinformation. This is getting insane. He's not the only one. You also have Governor Larry Hogan, who's a Republican from Maryland. He says there's no defense for the president's comments tonight, undermining our democratic process. And Senator Mitt Romney from Utah, who is also a Republican, of course, says Trump is wrong to say the election was rigged, corrupt, and stolen. Trump's claim damages the cause of freedom here and around the world and recklessly inflames destructive and dangerous passions. And Senator Pat Toomey says there's simply no evidence anyone has shown me of any widespread corruption or fraud. The president's speech last night was very disturbing to me because he made very, very serious allegations without any evidence to support it. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't Republicans who are defending Trump and his ridiculous allegations. In fact, let's take a look at this mashup.
The worst in the country right now is Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where they're not allowing the election observers in.
There's the process of observing an election that's being violated. Philadelphia elections are crooked as a snake. Why are they shutting people out? Because they don't want people to see what they're doing.
There's a reason they're defying the law. The reason you don't want observers there is because you're doing something you don't want to be observed.
President Trump won this election, so everyone who's listening, do not be quiet.
The Attorney General this afternoon issued an order that federal agents could carry guns in the pursuit of people who are breaking the law. That's a signal.
They did it and they violated the law. Nobody can testify to the legitimacy of what their counting was. Oh, what, a do-over in that state?
It is partisan, it is political, and it is lawless. And we're seeing this pattern in Democratic city after Democratic city.
They don't abide by the law and they don't allow observers in as the law calls for. Should they then invalidate this?
I think everything should be on the table.
You take them back. You say back? Flatly, any precinct that we were not able to observe, strip those votes out, do not count them because they're by definition corrupt.
All right, very powerful.
No, not very powerful, very unhinged, an absolute lunatic, someone who has completely lost his mind. I'm referring to Newt Gingrich's comments there, which Sean Hannity thinks are very powerful. The lawsuits that the Trump campaign have filed are so frivolous and so ridiculous that federal judges who are appointed by Republicans are getting increasingly frustrated and irritable by the situation. I wanna highlight one specific example, and there are many to be sure. So a federal judge in Pennsylvania where Trump holds an increasingly, well, at this point was an increasingly small lead, dismissed a Trump campaign lawsuit alleging that Philadelphia officials are not allowing Republican election observers sufficient access during the ballot tabulation process. When Judge Paul Diamond of the US District Court of Pennsylvania pressed a Trump campaign lawyer on whether Republican observers are currently present at the counting site, the attorney responded, get a load of this, there's a non-zero number of people in the room.
I love it.
Asked once more to provide a clear answer, the Trump campaign attorney said yes. I'm sorry, Diamond responded. Then what's your problem?
No, guys, that's one of my favorite quotes of all time. There's a non-zero number of people in the room.
Unbelievable.
So look, I want to break this down for you guys. So first they came with nonsense. Oh, there's wagons, there's sacks, there's Sharpies. They're just throwing out random words. Every one of those has been debunked, so they stopped talking about them because it just got embarrassing. It's not remotely true. The Republicans stopped talking about it. Louis Gohmert interviewed today, partly by Michael Schur, partly by JD Durkin, 2 different interviews, asked, okay, what is your evidence of fraud? You're down here in Philly, you're talking about fraud. He said, well, I don't have any, but in past elections, there's been fraud. Wait, what does that have to do with this election, even if it were true? He's like, well, you're living in a Pollyanna world. Wait, you're the one who just said there was fraud, and when I asked you what the evidence is, you gave me none. That sounds like a Pollyanna world. Okay, so they started with that. Now, their only claim, really, that's outstanding is this one. And it's not outstanding, the court's already ruled on it. And their claim was, we're not getting meaningful access. You remember this from days ago. And as soon as I saw that phrase, I told you guys on air, wait, that means they do have access. Meaningful access is not a thing. They put that adjective in there to make it sound like they're not in the room. Then Sean Hannity came on the air and lied through his teeth all last night. Those were some of the interviews that you saw there. In the longer versions of the interviews, he kept saying like, they won't allow the Republican observers in the room. They won't allow them. You got to throw, and that's why they're talking about a redo. He wants to redo the entire election in Pennsylvania because Republican observers were not in the room. That is why the judge asked, so were there Republican observers in the room? That's when the lawyer says there's a non-zero number of people in the room. And he's like, yeah, so that means they're in the room. He's like, yes. I told you, of course there's observers in the room. Then they got more desperate. They're like, well, yeah, fine, there's non-zero people in the room, but are they close enough? So they're 25 feet away, we want them to be 6 feet away. The first judge that saw it was like, okay, fine, what difference does it make? Put them 6 feet within the balance, it doesn't matter. They're like, plus we want binoculars. Oh, all right, so then the court above them was like, no, that's not a law that you have to be 6 feet. They're in the room, it's okay, proceed, count, let's go, right? And for us, me, you, anyone who cares about the elections, 6 feet, 25 feet, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Can they see the ballots? They can see the ballots. By the way, it's not like the Democrats are 1 foot away and the Republicans are 25 feet away. They're both at the same place. So no. I want 7 feet, 8 feet, 9 feet. So they're in the room. There's no question about it. So when you see Sean Hannity saying that there weren't Republican observers, it is a 100% lie, and he knows he's lying, and Fox News knows he's lying, and Ted Cruz knows he's lying, and Lindsey Graham and Newt Gingrich, they all know that they're lying, and they do it anyway, and they rile up their idiotic viewers who eat that stuff up. Oh, they won't they cheated. They wouldn't let the Republicans in the room. We gotta go to Philly. And now, of course, they caught somebody who went to Philly with weapons, okay? And so that's what Fox News is up to. Their reporters every once in a while say it before they get the memo to stop talking and saying facts. But on the ground in Philly, Fox News reporters said there is absolutely no evidence of fraud that has been presented by anyone. And then at night, Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity come on and they're like, oh, fraud, and then they lie. These court proceedings are not secret. They're not private. They're public. You can go read for yourself what was said in the court. And so the reality is there has been no allegation of actual fraud.
Yeah, and to your point, Jake, I mean, you mentioned Lindsey Graham. Look, we've obviously had some pretty strong and harsh criticism against Lindsey Graham, especially since he's a sniveling, conniving, cowardly, feckless, self-interested narcissist who is willing to put our democratic process on the line for his own political agenda and political aspirations. But he has completely latched onto whatever messaging the Trump campaign demands of him. That was after he decided to remain silent in the beginning when Trump started claiming that there was electoral fraud happening. And now take a look at how absolutely disgusting and pathetic his messaging is after getting pressured by lowlives like Don Jr. to go along with their messaging. Watch.
I'm going to donate $500,000 tonight to President Trump's defense legal fund, so we'll have the resources to fight. The allegations of wrongdoing are earth-shattering. It makes the Carter Page warrant application look on the up and up.
loser. Absolute pathetic loser.
Earth-shattering. He said earth-shattering. The allegations of being 7 feet instead of 8 feet away, it's earth-shattering, earth-shattering. What an unbelievable liar. Lindsey Graham is exactly why people despise politicians. So now look, you look at every single thing that they tried. In every case, it's comical. In Georgia, they're like, oh, this is an outrageous thing that they're doing. How many votes does it affect? By the way, it's not, and the court said no. How many? 53 votes. Okay, even if it were true, it would be entirely irrelevant. All of these elections are decided by thousands of votes. So they have absolutely nothing. And the longer these networks wait to call it, the more it seems like it's a legitimate question as to whether there's something wrong going on.
I mean, even the New York Post has the right take on what's going on right now. Let me give you 2 headlines. Headline number 1, Donald Trump Jr. calls for total war in clueless tweet. Headline number 2, downcast Trump makes baseless election fraud claims in White House address. It's amazing. It's amazing when even the New York Post is better than Lindsey Graham, and that's saying something. And with that said, look, what is the? Of course, Trump wants to try to steal this election, right? But what is the impact of the kind of rhetoric we're hearing from Trump and his loyalists? Well, it leads to violence. It leads to the supporters showing up to vote counting locations with the intention of intimidating people, with the intention of stopping the count. And here's an example out of Pennsylvania. Apologies, that video was actually from Michigan, but there was a foiled terrorist plot in Philly just last night where 2 QAnon supporters, QAnon believers, were showing up to a vote counting location armed, and luckily authorities were able to arrest them before something serious happened. We'll give you more details on that story later in the show. But it has real consequences. That's the point that I'm trying to make here.
Yeah, so that in Michigan, they were chanting stop the count, as you saw there. Later, they pleaded with Michigan to keep counting when Biden took the lead in Michigan. So in Pennsylvania, it got more absurd. They said, stop the count, stop the count. Biden took the lead. They're like, keep counting, keep counting. It's a joke. I mean, they're a joke, but it got worse. How could it get worse? Now they're saying we need a recount of Pennsylvania. So now they're chanting, count twice, count twice. Okay, they're not actually, to be accurate, they didn't send the supporters back out there to chant count twice. They might have reached a threshold of absurdity, but that is their contention in court. And what's great, and that's why Jonathan Turley, who's a legal expert supporting Donald Trump, supported him in his impeachment testimony, came out this morning. He's like, you're ruining your case because now you're gonna go to court and tell them to do you're gonna ask for a recount. But earlier you went to court and asked them to stop counting. So they're gonna ask you, which one is it, Mr. Trump? Do you want them to stop counting? Do you want them to keep counting? Or do you want them to count twice? Please make up your mind. Gee, I wonder who's right and who's wrong. Gee, I wonder who won and who lost. And it's just humoring Republicans is unacceptable. You have to call out lies for what they are, and that is clearly what's going on here. Because guys, the most dangerous thing that's still left on the table is leaving a question mark around this election for no reason when Biden has clearly won Pennsylvania and Nevada at a bare minimum. And then the right wing starts nonsense like, oh, there's fraud or et cetera, and all the things that we just explained to you. And then as soon as there's an issue, the way the cable news drives the rest of the news is, well, now we're debating it. Now MSNBC says this and Fox News says that. And all of a sudden it's debatable. And the minute it becomes debatable, the Republicans win the debate. because the Democrats cower, the media cowers, and I'm worried that we're in the middle of that now. So for God's sake, just have clarity. Yeah. And so it doesn't take much. I mean, why isn't every network reading the same things that we just read you? Where Republican lawyers say there's a non-zero number of people in the room. Why aren't they showing a clip of Sean Hannity pretending there wasn't Republicans in the room and then playing that quote and calling Sean Hannity what he is, a liar? They're afraid and they're worried about Republican reaction. That is political correctness. That is not factual correctness. Do your job.
We got to take a break, but when we come back, I'll give you the details on that foiled plot by Trump supporters at a vote counting location. So come right back. More details on that and more.
We get animated about the news. Yes, we're not the robots on TV. I actually care about the news. Guilty, I care.
Senator Sanders, I'm going to do something unusual. I'm going to ask you a policy question.
Hey, how dare you? That's the problem, you're the problem. Don't ever attack the Republicans. Where the is the liberal media? No. These are all establishment guys. They love the system as it is. They're all enormously rich off the system that exists.
For us, this system isn't working.
So what this campaign is about is trying to create an economy that works not only for the people on top, but works for all Americans.
We're gonna rock the boat. We're gonna be counter-establishment. We're gonna tell people the truth to the best of our abilities, and we're gonna keep it real with them.
It's winter, and it's cold this time of year, isn't it? Well, it might feel chilly, and the wind might bite at your nose. Maybe you want to snuggle up with a hot chocolate, or wrap up warm and wear your biggest coat. But in the grand scheme of things, our earth is too hot, and it's getting even hotter. Our seasons are getting confused. Lots of birds are nesting earlier, and spring flowers are coming out too soon. This is what climate change looks like. It's affecting so many of the things we love, both here in our own backyards and around the world. But we have hope because we know that together we can protect them if we act now and everyone does their bit. So this Christmas, give a gift of love and show the world you care.
How in the world are you going to get the right to vote if you don't already have the right to vote? That's impossible. Reason they tell you things are impossible is because they don't want you to try. It only took 7 years for that to get an amendment to get a right to vote.
Does this result in millions upon millions of Americans losing their coverage? And we've been waiting to find out, and now we know, yes, it will cut millions.
Public education was supposed to be the way to equalize everyone regardless of their socioeconomic status. But if you come from a family that's poor, how are you going to afford grade school for your kids?
This fight is about fairness and morality. It's about the American values.
You think that black people all across the country, in every city, were all lying when they said the police abuse and the police kill us when they should? No, of course they weren't lying. Yes, it does happen. Yes, they do get targeted more.
Why are we going to put immigrants in prison for 5 years, which American taxpayers have to pay for, if we're so concerned with immigrants using up our so-called resources?
We're gonna do both. We're gonna fight Trump and we're gonna fight the establishment. It's not that hard. Yes, you can do both at the same time. Go tell them.
ShopTYT.com has new shirts like this one. And you're thinking, Cenk, what is that one? I can't see it other than the black. Yes, so I'll show it to you. If you can read this, you're not practicing social distancing. Yes! Now, you were practicing social distancing. This is over video. But overall, you get it. ShopTYT.com.
okay? All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. So we've got a lot of stories for you, obviously, with the election happening now, and no updates on the vote count since we last shared it with you. And we do have an update. Biden's going to speak at 8 o'clock Eastern. So we'll see if the networks decide to call it right before then. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. So we actually have more news on why they're not calling it in a little bit. So let's get to it. Anna, what's next?
All right. Trump supporters in the Democratic stronghold of Philadelphia were caught plotting to attack a voting site as Trump lost his lead to Joe Biden. Now, of course, Donald Trump and his campaign have repeatedly claimed that this election was filled with all sorts of voter fraud, although they failed to provide any specific evidence or examples of that voter fraud. However, that messaging does unfortunately influence the lunatic QAnon supporters who believe that Donald Trump is this country's rightful leader. And so 2 of them were arrested after police received a tip about an apparent threat to attack a vote counting center in Philadelphia on Thursday night. So here's how it all went down based on the reporting that we have at the moment. Law enforcement told local media it received a tip at 10 p.m. that a group of people, possibly a family, was traveling from Virginia in a silver Hummer to carry out an attack on the Philadelphia Convention Center. 2 bicycle officers approached the men. Each man was carrying a firearm, and another weapon was found in that Hummer, in that vehicle, which they admitted does belong to them. A search revealed the men didn't have a license to carry a firearm in Pennsylvania, so each man was arrested. Let me be clear, these are people who don't even live in Philadelphia. They traveled from Virginia to Philadelphia to attempt to carry out this terrorist attack. This is what terrorists do in dictatorial regimes. And the identities of the 2 men have just been released and reported by the Washington Post. One of the men is in his 40s, the other one is in his 60s, but it doesn't matter. What matters here is that these are QAnon conspiracy theorists who support Trump, who believe the nonsense that's coming out of Trump's mouth. Ronna McDaniel, the head of the RNC today, held a press conference claiming that a whistleblower came out and informed them that there was fraud taking place. Again, these are claims that should go through the courts. And to be absolutely clear, some of these accusations have already been heard by federal judges who are growing increasingly irritable by the nonsense that they're bringing forward with absolutely no evidence whatsoever. In one of the cases in Philadelphia, a Trump campaign lawyer argued that the poll workers in Philadelphia are not allowing them to watch as they tabulate. And when the judge asked, okay, well, are there any people from the campaign, any Republicans watching the poll workers? They said that there was non-zero people there watching. And the judge asked for clarification, and finally the lawyer had to admit that, yeah, we actually did have someone watching. And so the judge is like, then what's your problem? Why are you here?
So it's not just Donald Trump. We told you earlier in the show about Sean Hannity pushing out total lies and conspiracy theories. Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Newt Gingrich, they're all on there. They're all talking about fraud that does not exist. Every story we've already debunked. And they full well know that they're lying and they're doing it. And then Louis Gohmert. So Louis Gohmert's asked by JD Durkin at Cheddar, do you have any evidence of fraud? He says no, but there might have been in past elections. So that's why it's so important that we tell you that there's fraud here. Okay, then Michael Schur asks Louis Gohmert, so what do you think is happening here?
So Cenk, not to interrupt you, but we actually have that video if you'd like to go to it right now.
Yeah, let's watch the JD Durkin one, and then the Michael Schur one is even worse. But let's watch this first.
What is the allegation of fraud? Have you seen the evidence?
You can have different kinds of evidence, and when somebody says, I voted and my vote was not counted, and here are the names of lots of other people that voted for Trump and their votes were not being counted, you got a problem. But that's not all.
Have you you seen any of that evidence yourself?
I'm hearing about the evidence from people that have. So anyway,
is it concerning at all to sort of fan the flames of this argument that there's fraud happening without you yourself, an elected member of Congress, having seen that fraud?
We need the proof shown in court. But obviously, you're in a Pollyanna world, and you don't see the destruction of this little exercise in freedom.
I mean, I don't have the evidence, but you live in a Pollyanna world. And so fanning the flames. And Michael Schur, in this case, was reporting for WGN. They haven't aired it yet, but I know with certainty from not only Michael, but from the network that Gohmert said, I blame Black Lives Matter and Antifa. What's he talking? Blame them for what? You haven't even presented any evidence. I blame them for a non-specific fraud because they're black people. It's a racism 101 to blame black people for crimes they didn't commit, and in this case, that don't even exist. And lo and behold, look at that, domestic terrorists show up to start shooting people. Huh? Hey, I don't know, I was just egging people on. It's called stochastic terrorism. I didn't ask Bob to show up. I just said, there's something terrible going on here. They're stealing something from you. You might want to do something about it. And remember your Second Amendment rights and all that rhetoric that the Republicans and the right wing normally use. And now you spray in, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, there's fraud, go get them. And lo and behold, a van full of QAnon people show up.
Yeah.
Super dangerous.
Yeah, and so how do we know they're QAnon people? I think it's important to be clear about that. Video footage of the vehicle, the Hummer that belonged to them, showed it covered with stickers promoting the baseless QAnon conspiracy theory, as well as associated slogans such as the Great Awakening and where we go one, we go all. An American flag also hung from the back of the car. By the way, how ironic is that? An American flag as you're showing up to a location where poll workers are counting ballots and your whole intention is to harm them physically with the weapons that you're carrying. They were armed with AR-15s, by the way, if you're wondering what kind of weapons. And here are some images of what their vehicle looked like.
What they're doing to the flag is a crime, right? I don't mean a physical crime, I mean a symbolic one. I mean, Anna's 100% right. Look at the irony of that. I'm an American, so I believe we shouldn't count votes and I should murder anyone who does. No, you missed the whole point of the country. Well, I should be the one in charge and brown and black people should be underneath me, okay? You missed the whole point of the country. All men are created equal. And yes, you might have missed a couple of amendments in there somewhere. So look, these specific folks who got arrested, they'll go through the court system. We'll find out what their insane motivations were, and we'll find out why they brought AR-15s. If you're wondering why we keep calling QAnon people lunatics,
it's because they are.
Yeah, if you don't know any of those conspiracies, count yourself lucky, but I'm gonna have to tell you now so that you know that, hey, it's not like, hey, we have a political disagreement, hey, they voted for that congressman and we don't agree with that congressman, or hey, they're in favor of more deregulation and we're not, etc. No, they believe that the top Democrats in this country are running a child sex trafficking ring, and some portions of them also believe that they're using child sacrifice, having child sacrifices, and then I guess they're doing something with the blood. Do I have to keep going? And there's some sort of transfer of fluids, and that's really vital to this. I don't know if they came to stop the transfer of fluids from the child sacrifices, or if they got all riled up about the vote count and how somehow that's connected to pizza. So these are the lunatics that Donald Trump said, well, they strongly care about child molesters. Meanwhile, Donald Trump said that he wishes well for the top, most renowned, infamous child molester in the country right now, Ghislaine Maxwell. She's the top aide of Jeffrey Epstein. She's under arrest, and Trump's like, I wish her well. I wish her really well. Meanwhile, these lunatics are like, the guy who says the child molester is awesome is the good guy who's trying to stop the child molesters. That's why I got to go kill someone. Okay, you see someone with a QAnon sticker or whatever, don't talk to them, just move away, leave them alone. They belong in an insane asylum, and they're likely to cause nothing but trouble because they can't form rational thoughts. By the way, QAnon also believe that Trump was part, and Robert Mueller initially and Trump were working in cahoots to expose these child molesters. When Robert Mueller said nothing of the sort, they didn't change their mind. When Donald Trump, after 4 years, didn't arrest anyone, in fact, the only person who was arrested, he said, I wish her well. It didn't change their mind. Why? That's why we call them lunatics. They're not attached to reality. And so when they show up with AR-15s, that is very serious. And in this case, great job by the authorities, credit where credit is due, in stopping these guys before they went in the building.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, I have a breaking news story for you regarding how some of these efforts by Trump are unfortunately beginning to work. We'll be back.
You know, old school's pitched to me from Jake. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? What are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps fucking cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong, I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times. Yuck.
But what makes you stop right before 40? You know, what makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m. There's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
I heard of it. I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not f***ing, Ben Mankiewicz. Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
And now it's just the three of us.
This is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
Fair enough.
Easily.
See, I watch movies.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Greg starts laughing, I can't stop. And I was just gonna ask you about getting high.
Snoogans, Snoochie Boochies.
And members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. TYT.com, join and free trial.
I'm old school with the old folks. Good.
John, come back.
Electric cars are awesome, but they aren't the best tool for every job. You can't park them on the edge of the sidewalk while you run into the store for a few things. On top of that, an electric car is just financially out of reach for many people. That's where Zoom electric scooters come in. When I say electric scooter, I'm talking about small motorcycles with space in front of you to put your feet. The Zoom scooter has a range of 60 miles, offers a smooth ride up to 40 miles per hour, and can be charged from any electrical outlet. Start saving on gas while reducing your carbon footprint. To find out more, go to tyt.com/Zoom. Enter the code TYT50 to get an additional discount.
I'm Brett. I would like to refer to this segment as the Do I Still Have This Talent show. So I want to see if I can play harmonica without my hands. I don't know why I have that. Nothing's gonna be more impressive than that. I can also spin a basketball on my finger. While drinking. I'm gonna spin a basketball on my finger while drinking apple juice. You can do this, dude. It's also flat. I don't know if that helps or hurts. And it seems to be somewhat wobbly. Ta-da! Nope, I don't know how to do this one. This one's a fail. Nope. Oh God, I'm so mad.
Our community faces a never-before-seen public health and economic crisis. Businesses are calling Levin Papantonia with their legal questions regarding COVID-19. You've asked and we've answered. If you're a business owner and have suffered financial loss or closure from COVID-19 and have questions regarding your insurance policy, call us for a free consultation. Some policies may provide coverage for lost profits and earnings. Stay safe, and together we'll get through this.
Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys, and you as well, because you're part of this show. So let me read a couple of member comments here. Jenny Penny says the Republican legislators and many voters not only have their own perception of truth, they also have their own language. Frightening. That's right. From now on, I'm a non-zero person. Jenkins Skinny Jeans writes in, I hear Pelosi will be writing a strongly worded letter to Trump if he continues to incite chaos. Indeed. Trump is probably trembling over it. She came out earlier today and said that President-elect Biden will have a strong mandate. Okay, and everybody's like, "Whoa, she's so strong." Okay, anyway, and Seb Chick on Super Chat makes an interesting point. Right now, Trump is losing Georgia by the same number of Republicans that died in Georgia due to COVID-19. Will he ever realize his mistakes? Well, I mean, the answer to that is obvious, never. And I don't know that those two things are connected, but it's a shame how many people have died overall. By the way, we broke another record yesterday. 118,000 cases in one day, top number of cases, not just in America, but in the world. Again, with this record incompetence on coronavirus, the Democrats could barely beat Donald Trump. I want to give a shout out quickly to our Twitch audience. Yeetwood Mac gave 5 subs. Trima FM gave 5 subs, and Dutycoff 28 gave 100 subs. So thank you to all of you guys looking out for each other. And St. K's, Dutycoff 28, and The Box Life also sub themselves. And if you have Amazon Prime, by the way, it's free to do it, to have a subscription on Twitch for us, but we get the revenue anyway, so it's a win-win for everybody. And speaking of win-wins, I want to do a quick shout out to our sponsor, Plant Your Change. Plants trees for you guys. If you want to hook up your credit card or your debit card to this account, you go to tyt.com/trees and get the details. But basically, they round up every dollar for you. When they do, no matter how big or small those cents are, they plant a tree for you guys, so you get to feel great about helping to contribute to the solution to climate change in the world. So tyt.com/trees to check that out. And if you're signing up on YouTube by hitting the join button below, or you're signing up on Twitch or anywhere else, we try to put your names and sometimes your comments as well in the ticker below. So check that out as well. Thank you guys. You make this show possible. All right, Anna, what's next?
Flood of breaking news. So this one's a doozy. As we know, Donald Trump seems to have no interest in conceding to the fact that he lost this election. Joe Biden has won. He is the president-elect. But according to Vanity Fair, and this is a literal headline by Bess Levin, Trump plans to barricade himself in the Oval Office and refuse to come out if Biden wins. He has told those closest to him that he refuses and will not concede. Donald Trump is not reasonable and he has no dignity. So instead, he's decided he'll keep fighting this thing well beyond the point that it's hugely embarrassing to do so, writes Vanity Fair. And even after that fails, refuse to acknowledge that he lost and that Joe Biden is going to be president. Trump apparently thinks he can just go on being president, even if the American people have fired him. According to CNN, Trump reportedly has not prepared a concession speech. It's amazing. And in conversations with allies in recent days, he has said he has no intention of conceding the election. And in the meantime, the Trump campaign is playing all sorts of games in their attempt to steal this election. In fact, Zachary Cohen from CNN tweets the following, and bear with me as I read this thread. The GOP member of a vote review panel in Gwinnett, Georgia, repeatedly argued Friday that write-in ballots for Mike Pence as president should count for Donald Trump, the group's Democratic representative tells me. The GOP panel member objected 5 to 6 times when write-in ballots for Pence were brought before the group, claiming those voters intended to vote for the Trump-Pence ticket, and therefore they should count for Trump. The argument was overruled each time, this person said. The source also tells me that the GOP review panel member in question was brought in during Friday's session to replace the original person who was serving as the party's representative. They called the swap disconcerting.
Okay, so let me comment on those one at a time. So if you bothered to write in Mike Pence, your intention was to vote for Mike Pence. It's not remotely unclear. Basically, you're saying, I'm a Republican. I like Pence, who's a good, solid right-wing evangelical Republican. I can't bear to vote for Donald Trump, who's at the top of the ticket, so I'm writing him in. Okay, but I don't have to read your intentions. Your intentions are actually irrelevant. You wrote Mike Pence. That's who you voted for. Why are they sending in guys like this? Just to gum up the works, just to delay the proceedings, challenge every single thing. It doesn't matter how absurd it is. So that's an attempt to thwart the actual results of the election. Now, to the earlier story about barricading himself in, I don't know if you got the memo, Trump, so I'll just show it to you so you're clear, okay? You're fired, okay? You're fired. That's the memo. So that's on shoptyt.com. And so, but you know what? Every time I say it, I get angrier at the networks. Biden right now, as we stand here, New York Times website, has a 1.8% lead in Nevada, over 22,000 votes. The only remaining districts are Democratic districts. What are you waiting for? So the longer you wait, the more Trump gets entrenched and his supporters get entrenched. And they say, oh, well, he's taking so long, it must be super close. And if Biden wins at the end, it must have been cheating. Call it already. Everybody knows he won. Everybody knows Biden won. Let's go, right? So, but look, at the end of the day, now unfortunately the day is going to stretch and stretch and stretch because apparently these networks are too scared of Trump to tell you what the truth is. So what's gonna happen is they gotta come and actually physically remove him from the building. And I told you about this how many months ago? We even did a petition about it. I told you this guy's like, when he says that he doesn't want to, they asked him 3 different times, do you want to do a peaceful transfer of power? And he did not give a clear yes. He said, well, it depends. No, it doesn't depend. You can barricade yourself in all you want, you lunatic dictator wannabe. But at some point, the Secret Service has to come and remove you from the building and then clear out the stench. And so we can have a president that actually believes in America. Could you imagine if any of these presidents, now Obama, it doesn't make sense because he never lost an election, but if he had and he just barricaded himself inside the White House, the right wing would have surrounded the building with weapons already by now, right? And so it's not a thing in America. It's not a thing in America. For you to say, I'm not gonna leave no matter what, even if everyone says you've lost the election, means you never believed in America. Un-American, un-American, un-American.
Let me give you more from this Vanity Fair article because I mean each paragraph is more amazing than the previous one. So it is a possibility the president did not consider in a serious way during the election, despite polls showing him with only a narrow path to victory, believing that looking past election day was bad luck. The delicate matter of a loss and the potential post-presidential life was not discussed widely among his team and was not raised often with the president, who believed adamantly he would win. Now people around Trump are working to identify who might be able to communicate to him the stark reality. There has been talk of potentially Jared Kushner or Ivanka Trump, though their willingness to lead a difficult intervention wasn't clear.
Now, what a baby, what a baby. Hey, let's get Ivanka. The baby listens to Ivanka. It's okay, Donnie, it's okay. I know it hurts, Donnie, I know it does. But you gotta stop crying now, Donnie. Okay, you've been crying for days and days. We gotta pack up, we gotta go, okay? But I don't wanna leave, I don't wanna leave. I mean, our president is so immature. They're strategizing inside his own White House. Which adult can we send to talk to him to get him to stop throwing a temper tantrum? Anna said this a couple of days ago, but my God, it's never been more right. The right wing who talked about a meltdown for us or any Democrats in 2016. You remember all the memes of like the woman crying in the streets, like go, ah, and then they would put that at meltdown. No. This is what a meltdown looks like.
This is a real meltdown.
When you barricade yourself in the White House and you're crying and well, to be fair, they didn't say crying, I'm saying crying. But you're so despondent and you're detached from reality, and they have to send your grown adult daughter to talk you down and say, Donnie, we might have to leave at some point, okay? And so that's the conversation we're having now. That's a meltdown.
It's amazing.
Okay, guys, we have so many more stories for you guys, including, and we're gonna go today. Normally we go to the post game. No, because of the election, we're gonna keep on going. Thank you to all the members that make our extra coverage possible for everyone. You can hit the join button below on YouTube to become a member and make that possible. Normally in the post games, if you sign up at the essentials level, you get those. At the premium level, you get all of our videos and all of our shows. And thank you to everybody who signed up anywhere else at tyt.com/join. And guys, don't forget, we're doing a fundraising drive that is so important and critical to us, tyt.com/go. Without that, we wouldn't have been able to give you all this coverage throughout this week, and we're gonna keep it going, obviously. And if it stretches into the weekend, God help me, I'll have to do it during the weekend, and we'll be back and on the air constantly doing it because of the members and because of tyt.com/go. But we are gonna come back free and available to everyone. And when we return, one of the greatest quotes I've seen from politics is from a Democrat. You'll love it. We get animated about the news. Yes, we're not the robots on TV. I actually care about the news. Guilty, I care.
Senator Sanders, I'm gonna do something unusual. I'm gonna ask you a policy question.
Hey, how dare you? That's the problem, you're the problem. Don't ever attack the Republicans. Where the is the liberal media? No, these are all establishment guys. They love the system as it is. They're all enormously rich off the system that exists.
For us, this system isn't working.
So what this campaign is about is trying to create an economy that works not only for the people on top, but works for all Americans.
We're gonna rock the boat. We're gonna be counter-establishment. We're gonna tell people the truth to the best of our abilities, and we're gonna keep it real with them.
It's winter, and it's cold this time of year, isn't it? Well, it might feel chilly, and the wind might bite at your nose. Maybe you want to snuggle up with a hot chocolate, or wrap up warm and wear your biggest coat. But in the grand scheme of things, our earth is too hot, and it's getting even hotter. Our seasons are getting confused. Lots of birds are nesting earlier, and spring flowers are coming out too soon. This is what climate change looks like. It's affecting so many of the things we love, both here in our own backyards and around the world. But we have hope, because we know that together we can protect them if we act now and everyone does their bit. So this Christmas, give a gift of love and show the world you care.
How in the world are you gonna get the right to vote if you don't already have the right to vote? That's impossible. Reason they tell you things are impossible is because they don't want you to try. It only took 7 years for that to get an amendment to get a right to vote.
Does this result in millions upon millions of Americans losing their coverage? And we've been waiting to find out, and now we know, yes, it will cut millions.
Public education was supposed to be the way to equalize everyone regardless of their socioeconomic status. But if you come from a family that's poor, how are you gonna afford grade school for your kids?
This fight is about fairness and morality. It's about the American values.
You think that black people all across the country, in every city, were all lying when they said the police abuse us and the police kill us when they should? No, of course they weren't lying. Yes, it does happen. Yes, they do get targeted more.
Why are we going to put immigrants in prison for 5 years, which American taxpayers have to pay for, if we're so concerned with immigrants using up our so-called resources?
We're gonna do both. We're gonna fight Trump and we're gonna fight the establishment. It's not that hard. Yes, you can do both at the same time. Go tell them.
ShopTYT.com has new shirts like this one. And you're thinking, Cenk, what is that one? I can't see it other than the black. Yes, so I'll show it to you. If you can read this, you're not practicing social distancing. Yes! Now, you were practicing social distancing. This is over video. But overall, you get it. ShopTYT.com.
We're back on the Young Turks extended election coverage. Coverage that honestly we wish had already been over. And if the networks had the courage to call an election that is obviously over, we wouldn't need this. But as it is, we continue. But lucky for you guys, we have the perfect guest for you now. Joining me now is Harvard Law professor Larry Lessig. Given that Donald Trump's last recourse appears to be the courts, he's a perfect person to talk to at this point. Professor Lessig, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here, Cenk.
All right, so let's get started. I think we start with the simple stuff. They brought a number of cases in across the country in Pennsylvania, Georgia, etc. As you see them right now, do any of the current lawsuits have any merit?
The lawsuits are going nowhere. Election lawyers refer to the margin of the lawsuit. Like, is the lawsuit going to affect the margin of victory? And none of these lawsuits are talking about numbers that could affect the margins of victory. So this is a completely unprepared and ultimately futile effort. It's not going to stop the count coming to some kind of resolution. The real question is what happens if the state legislatures start thinking about appointing another slate of electors. Then we cross into territory the country has not seen since 1876. But I don't think anything's going to happen in the courts that's going to ultimately save this for Donald Trump.
So I want to get to the slate of electors in a second because that's such an interesting topic. But on the courts, you're basically saying in the current suits that they have, we already went through the merits of them earlier in the show, and they're comical. And they've all been dismissed. But you're saying on top of that, even if they weren't dismissed, they involve 53 votes, 93 votes, nothing that would affect elections.
Right. I mean, they have no logic between the things they're complaining about and what they're hoping to achieve. Like, so, the big deal that Donald Trump makes about the fact that allegedly, this doesn't even turn out to be true, but allegedly they're not allowing Republican poll watchers to be in there with them as they're counting votes. The remedy to that is just to allow them in. I mean, the Trump campaign wants to say the remedy is to stop counting or throw away votes. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. So this part of the story is completely boring. There's nothing that's going to happen in the courts that's going to dislodge what seems to be pretty clear progression to Joe Biden be winning easily the number of votes he needs in the Electoral College.
Okay, I love that dismissal. They're not only wrong and ineffectual and have the wrong arguments, but they're boring. So now the next step would be, all right, we lost in the courts, but before we even get to the electors, there's this weird contention that they're making, and one of Trump's lawyers actually, or lawyers for Trump, went on Lou Dobbs' program last night and said, we're going to take this to the Supreme Court, and basically implied that's why we put Amy Coney Barrett on the court. But Larry, I didn't understand what they're taking to the Supreme. Is there a thing they could take to the Supreme Court?
Not yet. I think if they try this alternative slates, idea, that issue is going to get to the courts. And I think there's a pretty easy reason why they're going to lose that. But on these counts, there's just nothing that's going to get to the courts. There's no interesting issue there.
Right. Okay. So what is the alternate slate of electors? So the Electoral College is a fascinating thing that hardly anyone understands, and obviously we shouldn't have, and you tried to remedy that in some ways, and we could talk about that as well. But what in the world does an alternate slate of electors mean?
Well, so this is something that Bart Gellman reported in The Atlantic a couple months ago, that the Trump campaign was actually thinking that if the push comes to shove, they would get Republican legislatures to just appoint another slate of electors from the state. So for example, in a state like Arizona, which has Republican legislature, the state has gone, looks like it will go for Biden. The Republican legislature would just appoint another slate of electors. And that slate of electors would then be certified by the governor. And that certified slate of electors would then compete with the other slate, the slate that comes from the vote. And the problem is that the Electoral Count Act, which is the statute that governs how electoral contests like this gets resolved, basically says that if Congress can't agree which slate counts, which if you imagine a Republican Senate and Democratic House is not, they're not going to agree, then it's the slate that has been signed by the governor. And so this is this kind of tricky end run, which at least potentially could have given them the opportunity to appoint these slates and to progress with them. And the basis, the grounds for doing this, is an argument which a bunch of constitutionalists have made. Rehnquist made in Bush versus Gore, Kavanaugh echoed in the Wisconsin case, and now Mark Levin has embraced. And the argument is that Article 2 of the Constitution, the provision that sets up how the electors get selected, actually gives the states an unlimited power to select electors however they want. And that means even just to change their mind and say, we said that they would be selected by an election, we're not going to select that anymore. So think of this as a kind of constitutional superpower that they think the legislatures have. And so the first question is, do they have that superpower? And my view is actually because of the case that I lost in the Supreme Court, the court would say they don't have that superpower. The case, we took a case up asking the question whether electors could be bound by the states or not. And it was pretty clear the original perspective, the originalists should have said that the framers of the Constitution meant for electors to be free. But the court didn't say that. 9-0, the court said, well, that might have been what things were originally, but democracy has overtaken the framers' design. And today, as Kagan said in the last words of her opinion, here, we the people rule. And so under that conception, democracy has changed the power of electors. And I think the court would say democracy has changed the power of legislatures, because the framers certainly didn't want a situation where the legislatures got to pick the president. They explicitly talked about that. They explicitly rejected it. So I think that if the question came to the court would say, no. You can't appoint a slate of electors through an election and then change your mind. I mean, maybe you could say we're not going to have an election this year. But if you choose to have an election and they pick a slate of electors, that slate is the slate for the state, and there's nothing you can do to get around it.
Now, I've often said on the show, usually in regards to Democratic strategy, you don't win by losing, you win by winning. Well, now I'm gonna have to put an asterisk on it. And I know that you knew this going in, that you would actually ironically set up a win-win here. But by losing that Supreme Court decision, you've actually protected democracy in a wonderful way.
Well, I mean, but let's be clear. I mean, I took that case and we saw we could win on either outcome. We thought if we won and the court said, yes, electors are free, we would see an enormous amount of efforts to try to fix that problem. And that, would have led to the reform of the Electoral College. That's obviously something that many people are fighting for. But we also saw that if we lost, it would create this way of saying that whatever Rehnquist thought about the Electoral College, the design of the Electoral College under Article 2, that's been changed. And now we're in a position where we can say democracy rules, the people rule. You can't muck about with an election by picking another slate of electors.
No, that's why people think you're brilliant, because that really is a win-win.
Two people do. My daughter thinks I'm brilliant. That's
well, that's already a win. Okay, so, but I want to go back all the way to the beginning, because for folks who are not familiar with this, it does get confusing. So when we talk about an alternate slate of electors, first let's talk about how the electors are normally picked. So let's take a state like California, Biden wins easily. How do the electors get picked?
Yeah, so the normal rule is federal law says that there will be a date on which the electors get appointed, and on that date there's an election, and the election is governed by, in most states, all but 2 states, a principle called winner take all. So the winner of the popular vote in that state gets all of the electors from that state, and so those electors are appointed based on what happens on election day.
Who appoints them?
Sorry, go ahead.
Who appoints them? Is it a political office? Who appoints them, saying, okay, Bob and Sally, you guys are going to go and perfunctorily vote for Biden?
Yeah, so it's different in each state, but the general rule is it's usually the party. Pennsylvania has a weird rule where it says the presidential candidates just name the slate of electors. The party will select it. In some states, you'll have party elections and like local conventions, but it's basically a process to assure that the party is nominating people they can trust to carry out the will of the election, and so those electors get nominated, and then they will gather on December 14th this year in the state capitol, and they will cast their votes. And as they cast their votes, the Electoral College then gets set for that state. And when we talk about an alternative slate, what we're imagining is there's actually 2 rooms. One room with the Republican electors, one room with the Democratic electors. And each of them will cast their votes, and there'll be a list of their votes, and they'll sign them, and they'll send them both to Washington. And so this is the thing people have been anxious about. But I actually think, so here's the good news. This is the really good news. I mean, like the legal argument's clever, and I think it's right, and I think the court would ultimately do it. But it's the political argument that's the most important. There are only 2 states now where this could work. One state is Arizona, that has a Republican legislature and a Republican governor. The other state is Georgia, that has a Republican legislature and a Republican governor. Those are the only 2 states that could play this game, because every other state that Biden has won either has a Democratic governor or has a Democratic legislature. So, if they tried to play this game in Pennsylvania, and to their credit, the Republican legislators in Pennsylvania said, we don't think we have this power, we're not going to play this game. But if they tried to play this game, the Democratic governor would sign Joe Biden's slate of electors, and so the Democratic slate would prevail. But in Arizona and in Georgia, there's at least the potential for this game to play out. But the problem is, if Biden wins Nevada and Pennsylvania, he doesn't need Georgia and Arizona anymore. So when the Republicans sort of sit back and think, are we going to play this incredibly ballsy game of basically saying, screw you to the 4 million extra votes that Biden has gotten, and the fact that he clearly should have won in the Electoral College? We're going to say, screw you to that. We're just going to pick our own slate of electors and we're going to force it through. I think they're going to think, it's a pretty high risk. And if it blows up in our face, it'll be really devastating. And if there's no way for us ultimately to win playing this game, let's just not play this game. We're not trying to make a political point or a legal jurisprudential point. We're trying to win. And if we can't win, there's no reason to cause this kind of trouble. So I'm more confident today than I was 2 days ago, after working through these numbers and like seeing how it plays out. And so I think that they both would lose in the Supreme Court on this strategy, but they would also lose politically. They just can't get 270 votes for Donald Trump playing this game.
Right, but it is, first of all, Pennsylvania and Nevada have not been called, frustratingly so, but they haven't yet. And so it is still conceivable that it could come down to those 2 states. And I suppose it's still on the board that they could at least try to what I would characterize as steal the election, full well knowing they did not win Arizona and Georgia. And that would be the whole point of this. If they won it, they just need one slate of electors, the one that actually won.
Yeah.
And so this strategy is specifically designed to subvert democracy. There is no other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There is no other purpose.
And that's why it's so important that people like you are talking about it, because what we have to do is inoculate the system against these games. If it just kind of rolled out and they started playing this game and they started talking about the framers and what was intended and blah, 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 they might be able to get away with it. But if we build a recognition right now that, number one, given what happened in the electoral case in July, this is not a fair move anymore. Even if it was a fair move, a year ago, it's not a fair move now. And number two, you play this game and what you're gonna face is people who recognize you are just literally stealing the election. And if 7% of America showed up because George Floyd was murdered, what percentage of America is gonna show up if this election is stolen in a context where Joe Biden wins more votes than anybody ever, gets a majority of the public, and 4 million votes more than Donald Trump. I mean, I just think that the pressure to do the right thing here is gonna be so great. And on the other side, people, the politicians just don't like Donald Trump. I mean, they're afraid of him, but not anymore. Why would you be afraid of him now? Like, good riddance for many of them. It's like enough waking up every morning and just wondering which tweet we have to explain or which terrible behavior we have to find a way to justify. So I think he is in a corner. And the scary thing is he realizes that, he loses and he loses everything because the liability, the debts, the potential prosecutions, this is just gonna be a nightmare for the rest of his life. And so I can see why he's fighting, but I don't see his move right now.
So Professor Lessig, we talked about the state legislatures in this maneuver and we talked about the courts. What, if any, is the role of the House?
Yeah, so what happens, so there's a couple other of these kind of weird strategies. We actually put together a 10-part podcast. I taught a class called Wargaming 2020 and the kids, and we put together this website. You can find it at EC for Electoral College -facts, FAQS.US. And on there's a podcast, and it has 10 episodes of like every single way in which this could go sideways. So the other way this could go sideways is when Congress, is the vice president. When Congress receives, let's imagine they receive multiple slates. And let's imagine that, it's states where you just have a Republican legislature, not necessarily a Republican governor. I mean, again, Pennsylvania said it's not gonna play this game, but imagine Pennsylvania did. So Pennsylvania sends a slate of Republican electors and the Democrats send a slate of Biden electors signed by the governor. The vice president is told in the Constitution that he's the custodian of the certificates and he's supposed to open them. And then it says in a passive voice that the votes shall then be counted. And there's always been this ambiguity by whom? Like who's supposed to be counting them? And Congress's view has been, we control this process. Congress controls this process. But there's an argument that, well, basically the vice president with a divided Congress effectively controls the process. So imagine Vice President Pence, who will be the vice president overseeing this, gets this 2 slates from Pennsylvania, one signed by the governor for Joe Biden and one the Republican slate. And Mike Pence says, I think there was a lot of illegality in Pennsylvania, and I just think I think the numbers were wrong, and I think the Republicans won. And so I'm gonna recognize the Republican slate. Okay, now immediately there's an objection to that. And under the Electoral Count Act, he shouldn't be allowed to do that if the Democratic slates have qualified for the safe harbor provision. But the point is, there's an argument, and then the houses separate and they have to vote. So the House votes. Do they uphold the objection or uphold Mike Pence? And the Senate votes. And imagine they split. So you've got one House favoring what Pence is doing and the other House opposing it. Well, in that circumstance, nobody has overruled the chair. And so Mike Pence basically gets to say, well, my ruling stands. Nobody's overruled it. So my ruling is Pennsylvania Republican electors get counted. That's really the nuclear option here. And if Mike Pence plays that game, it's kind of the inversion of Gerald Ford pardoning Nixon. Like Mike Pence plays that game, it's like the end of Mike Pence's career. But maybe Mike Pence thinks he has no choice because it would be the end of his career if he didn't fall on his sword to help Donald Trump get reelected. So to the extent people are worrying about behavior that's radically outside of what the law requires, I think they're worrying about that. And I'm kind of worried about that, but we'll have to see how the narrative develops over the next 6 weeks.
So let's say they play that game and they don't care about the political consequences. They think we're never gonna win another national election anyway. We might as well just cement our rule here. And technically, they could do an alternate slate of electors. Pence could choose it, especially with the split Congress. So we're gonna do it. What happens then when it gets taken to the Supreme Court?
Well, there's a first really hard question whether the Supreme Court would hear that case. And the reason is there's a doctrine called the political question doctrine that says that when some issue or question has been vested in a coordinate body, has been like committed to a coordinate body, the court won't step in and second guess them. And you can be damn sure that there'll be many justices on that court who are going to want to say, look, we're not allowed to step in. Oh, and by the way, it turns out to elect the guy we want to be elected. So there's a big question of whether they would step in. If they step in, then the question is this statute which governs the process, the statute that I said says that the ties go in favor of whatever slate the governor assigned, is that statute constitutional? There have been people who have said it's not constitutional. I think the Supreme Court will say it's clearly constitutional. And again, that comes from the elector case that they decided in July, because what the court said in that case is, to the extent this is ambiguous, it's unclear, history has liquidated the question. Like we have come to an understanding of like what this process is, and that's the understanding we're going to enforce. Well, that's true here too. The Electoral Count Act was enacted in 1887 after the last really contentious fight where there were multiple slates of electors, which was in 1876. In 1876, there were 4 states that had multiple slates of electors. 3 of them in exactly the kind of circumstance we have right now. The Republicans and the Democrats each accused the other of fraud, and so they each just sent a slate of electors up. It was almost another civil war. Indeed, it was very close to an outbreak of violence that was averted at the last minute by a deal which basically condemned African Americans to another 100 years of slavery. But the response to that was to pass this statute, the Electoral Count Act, which has governed for the past 140 years. I think the court looks at that statute and says, this is constitutional. Mike Pence, you don't have the power to ignore what the governor has done. The governor in Pennsylvania has signed the Democratic slates. It's the Democratic slate that should be counted. Again, assuming the Supreme Court decides wants to step in, which is a big assumption here.
So unfortunately, what I'm hearing from you on that avenue is it's actually theoretically possible.
Oh yeah, I don't know. It's all theoretically possible. I'm just saying they've got to estimate, they've got to calculate how much are they willing to sacrifice, and I think they're only going to calculate is like what happens to the nation. What happens to the nation if this leads to the perception of this absolutely illegal intervention that stole the election for somebody who clearly lost the election. This is not like Bush v. Gore or even 2016 where there's like this ambiguity. He wins one side, he loses the other side. He's lost on both sides. Like the Republicans feel entitled to have a president who wins the Electoral College even if they don't win the popular vote. But nobody's ever said you're entitled to have the president if you lose in the Electoral College and lose the popular vote, right? That's supposed to be the baseline assumption we've all had. And if they fight that on the basis of these trumped up, totally fabricated charges, I don't know what happens. So I think you see really critical Republicans trying to read the riot act to the Trump activists and make them recognize they're just not going to go with it. I mean, Karl Rove said, the idea that you would have hundreds of thousands of illegal ballots is a sort of, as he said, quote, James Bond story. It's just not happened. It just is not the case. There is not this level of fraud. And if you've got Karl Rove saying that, and you begin to have other leaders in the Republican Party who just say this is just wrong to be besmirching, the work of these local election officials by suggesting they're part of this massive fraud, I think the party begins to split. And so Mitch McConnell, of course, will do whatever he wants. He's the Dark Lord. And I hope you're talking about the need for everybody to move to Georgia to make sure that those 2 special elections go Democratic so that we can make sure he's not the majority leader. But Mitch McConnell may say he'll do whatever it takes. But Mitch McConnell has got, to get 50 votes in the Senate. And I'm sure there's more than one of those or 2 of those senators who are like, I'm just not gonna, Mitt Romney, and at least 1 or 2 others, I'm not gonna sacrifice the Republic for Donald Trump. It just doesn't make sense. So it's conceivably possible, absolutely. Ned Foley has a great piece in the Washington Post today pointing that out. But so far, I think we're leading towards a place where saner minds are going to say, I'm sorry, you need to go home and face yet another bankruptcy.
Well, Professor Lessig, this started out as reassuring and ended scary. If we're relying on the Republicans to do the right thing at the end, oh boy, buckle up. All right, Professor Larry Lessig from Harvard Law School, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Great to talk to you, Cenk.
All right. Okay, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna let you absorb that. Okay, we're gonna come back with more news, and we'll be right back.
We get animated about the news. Yes, we're not the robots on TV. I actually care about the news. Guilty, I care.
Senator Sanders, I'm gonna do something unusual. I'm gonna ask you a policy question.
Hey, how dare you? That's the problem, you're the problem. Don't ever attack the Republicans. Where the is the liberal media? No, these are all establishment guys. They love the system as it is. They're all enormously rich off the system that exists.
For us, this system isn't working.
So what this campaign is about is trying to create an economy that works not only for the people on top, but works for all Americans.
We're gonna rock the boat. We're gonna be counter-establishment. We're gonna tell people the truth to the best of our abilities, and we're gonna keep it real with them.
It's winter, and it's cold this time of year, isn't it? Well, it might feel chilly, and the wind might bite at your nose. Maybe you want to snuggle up with a hot chocolate, or wrap up warm and wear your biggest coat. But in the grand scheme of things, our earth is too hot, and it's getting even hotter. Our seasons are getting confused. Lots of birds are nesting earlier, and spring flowers are coming out too soon. This is what climate change looks like. It's affecting so many of the things we love, both here in our own backyards and around the world. But we have hope, because we know that together we can protect them if we act now and everyone does their bit. So this Christmas, give a gift of love and show the world you care.
How in the world are you going to get the right to vote if you don't already have the right to vote? That's impossible. Reason they tell you things are impossible is because they don't want you to try. It only took 7 years for that to get an amendment to get a right to vote.
Does this result in millions upon millions of Americans losing their coverage? And we've been waiting to find out, and now we know, yes, it will cut millions.
Public education was supposed to be the way to equalize everyone regardless of their socioeconomic status. But if you come from a family that's poor, how are you going to afford grade school for your kids?
This fight is about fairness and morality. It's about the American values.
You think that black people all across the country, in every city, were all lying when they said the police abuse us and the police kill us when they should? No, of course they weren't lying. Yes, it does happen. Yes, they do get targeted more.
Why are we going to put immigrants in prison for 5 years, which American taxpayers have to pay for, if we're so concerned with immigrants using up our so-called resources?
We're gonna do both. We're gonna fight Trump and we're gonna fight the establishment. It's not that hard. Yes, you can do both at the same time. Go tell them.
ShopTYT.com has new shirts like this one. And you're thinking, Cenk, what is that one? I can't see it other than the black. Yes, so I'll show it to you. If you can read this, you're not practicing social distancing. Yes! Now, you were practicing social distancing. This is over video. But overall, you get it. ShopTYT.com.
All right, back on the Young Turks. In the ad there, I was standing up to show you a shirt. I'm gonna do it again. You're fired, okay? This is ShopTYT.com. It's an awesome shirt. It's the reality, whether the networks say it or not. And at some point, they're gonna have to say it. So now Biden's thinking of delaying his speech because these news organizations are denying the obvious reality, and it's super frustrating. Raymond wrote in on Super Chat, as a non-zero voter, I think Biden won the election. Danbert No Bacon wrote in, fantastic coverage this week, calling a coup and showing the world how culpable the corporate media have been in creating conditions that enable this chaotic and dangerous situation. Thank you, brother, we appreciate it. Guys, another way to help, again, is it's so important, TYT.com/go. That allows us to stay on air and to give you this strong coverage, and we appreciate you guys being part of the Young Turks in when you do that. And I read the names behind the scenes of the people who donated, and as I see your names, all these wonderful different names for different places, it gives me life. And as I read every name, I think that's the folks who make this show possible. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart. Meanwhile, Feisty Fan on Super Chat says, Cenk's mocking of Trump gives me life. Thank you, I appreciate that as well. And now to our members on our website. Marit, the Norwegian Viking, wrote in, I love listening to smart people. That's an obvious reference to Professor Larry Lessig. So not me in that interview, but I love the way that he explained it. He was very clear and at the end a little scary. And then I wanted to read one last one for you guys. Yes, Max's mama writes in, it's ironic that Republicans call Democrats the do-nothing Dems, but can they say Democrats are capable of rigging an election in several states and by razor-thin margins? My head can't swivel fast enough to keep up with their changing position. And I wanted to read that because think about the absurdity, and Donald Trump Jr. did say this on Twitter. He's like, oh, so they rigged the election in favor of Biden, but they didn't even win the Senate, so that proves we're right. I'm like, no, Uday, I believe that proves you're wrong, because if they bothered cheating, why wouldn't they give themselves the Senate too? And why would they cheat with such razor-thin margins that you would need a recount in Georgia and that they would leave it up in the air and that it couldn't be called for a week? Well, actually, come to think of it, as I was saying it, if anyone would bungle cheating like that, it would be the Democrats. But of course that makes no sense at all. But they're Republicans, logic not required. All right, Anna, more news.
All right, well, turns out that the personalities over at Fox News were informed through two different memos that they should not refer to Joe Biden as president-elect, even though Joe Biden has won the presidential election. The memo said that Fox should stay away from using the description and instead say something like, Biden has enough electoral votes to win the presidency. The memos justified the unusual positioning by citing the moves by Trump's legal teams to challenge the results. Numerous legal analysts, however, have dismissed the lawsuits and potential legal maneuverings as having little to no merit, because guess what? They have little to no merit. We will report both sides, the Fox memo reads, until there is further guidance, one of the memos says. The second of the two email messages correctly said that Biden does not become president-elect until the votes are certified. However, it is common for news organizations to use such language after the election has been called. In fact, as we all know, Fox referred to Trump as president-elect the day after the 2016 election. And so, unfortunately, we are seeing other cable news networks hold off on announcing who the winner of this general election is, even though it is abundantly clear that Biden has won and Trump has no path to victory, period, end of story. And as a result, people like Rush Limbaugh, who previously conceded that Biden won the election, is now walking back his statements. The Hill reporting that Limbaugh walked back comments he made on his show Friday, referring to Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden as the winner of the 2020 presidential election. During his show, Limbaugh was discussing comments made by sports columnist Jason Whitlock on Tucker Carlson's show, in which he said he hoped that the love President Trump has from his followers would prevail over the hate that is giving Biden an edge.
How's that for ironic?
Rush Limbaugh, weighing in on love and hate. Yeah, not interested. Not interested in what he has to say about love or hate. Anyway.
So that's why we're very frustrated at the networks. So Jake Tapper this morning is yelling at Fox News, you better get your anchors to call it like it is. So then in the morning when I saw that, I said, okay, great. So Jake Tapper, you're at CNN, you're gonna call it like it is. The election's over, right? Here we are 8 hours later, Jake Tapper still has not called the election. And it's not Jake's job to call the election, it's CNN's decision desk, I guess, that does it. But what are you yelling at Fox News for? They actually have called more states than you have. They called Arizona, you still haven't. Nevada is the most obvious thing in the world that Biden has won. CNN won't even call Nevada. So, yeah, Fox News, get your people in line. Meanwhile, we're too scared to call the election, so we're not gonna. By the way, the head of CNN is Jeff Zucker, who's the person who hired Donald Trump for The Apprentice at NBC. That's why Donald Trump had an extra $400 million, which he's now blown through. And who also said that Trump was good for ratings and gave Donald Trump over $1 billion of free media coverage at CNN in 2016. So I'm not being conspiratorial. I don't think Jeff Zucker is making the decision to not announce the results. But I'm saying, Jake, if you're upset at the executives at Fox News for not being clear, well, you've got your own executives you could be upset at, but conveniently you've kind of left them out of it. So now on the court cases, we just had Professor Larry Lessig from Harvard on here, and he's one of the top experts in the country, in the world, and in the world, but mainly, of course, it's about America. So here, and he explained that the cases that the Trump lawyers have brought forward so far are comical, wrong, and irrelevant. Even if they won, it affects like 53 votes, 93 votes. It wouldn't affect the election at all. They have no chance of going to the Supreme Court with those cases because there's nothing to decide. There's no issue. And in fact, he even called them boring. And then, but get a load of Fox News saying, now look, don't call him president-elect yet. We have to be really careful. Forget 2016. In 2000, Fox News was the first to call George Bush president-elect when he hadn't even won the election. We're talking about 4,000 votes in Georgia, 20,000 votes in Nevada, etc. At the time, a lot of you might remember, it was 537 votes in Florida, and that turned out to be not even true, but that's under 1,000 votes. And Fox News came out and said, that's it, George Bush won. Everybody call him president, everybody call him president. You know who made that call? John Ellis Bush, working at Fox News, head of their decision desk, was a cousin of George W. Bush and literally called George W. Bush and Jeb Bush and said, I'm gonna call the election for you guys, good luck, okay? And he did, and then all the other idiot press went along, like, yes, that's it, George Bush is the president. Fox News beat us to it. Oh, we gotta get in there, we gotta get ratings. We gotta beat Fox News, okay, George Bush is president. Later, after the Supreme Court stopped a recount of Florida, the news agencies counted all of Florida. Al Gore had won. Not just the popular vote, he had won the Electoral College. They literally stole that election from him. because Fox News jumped in and said, that's that George Bush is president. For them to now turn around and go, just us? We're being really careful. That's why we don't want you to call him president-elect. I'll give Chris Wallace and Brett Baer a little bit of credit here. After that story came out, just to kind of show, oh yeah, we're credible journalists. They said, possible president-elect Joe Biden. Like, what are you gonna do now? By the way, in the old days, Roger Ailes would have fired him. That's what he would have done. And now they don't do that, so that's why they can get away with it. Tweaking Trump or the Republicans from time to time. But to me, actually, the most important part of this whole story is the Rush Limbaugh part. Even Rush Limbaugh had admitted that Biden had won, but because the CNNs of the world won't call the election, he's like, oh, these idiots are gonna let us pretend that this is an election that isn't decided, and then we could rile up our base even more and send them to the voting centers and pretend that this is a debatable issue? Yes, how did we get this lucky? I mean, by browbeating the press and having them be preposterously weak, that's how you got this lucky. I mean, we've got "you're fired" shirts, right? We called the election at 9 a.m. Eastern today. So did Decision Desk HQ, because it's exceedingly clear. But here we are, now the Republicans can't believe their luck that the media is this weak.
Yeah, well, one person who also announced Biden's win is Nancy Pelosi, and I did want to go to this video. It was a longer press conference, but we have a quick snippet for you. Let's take a look.
How exciting it is to come before you today with Joe Biden having the tremendous mandate that he has, and that pretty soon the hyphen will be gone from vice president to president-elect Joe Biden. It's a happy day for our country because Joe Biden is a unifier, because he is determined to bring people together, because he respects all points of view. And as he has said, I ran as a Democrat, I'll govern as president for all of the people, whether they voted for me or not.
How about some points of view don't deserve respect? How about that? How about lunatic QAnon conspiracy theorists who will probably call every Democratic opponent of theirs a pedophile? We don't respect their point of view. How about that? But no, Biden has a very important mandate. That is, if he doesn't allow Trump to stage a coup in the United States, Biden has a very important mandate to unify a country that's not interested in unifying. I personally am not interested in sitting down and having a discussion with QAnon conspiracy theorists or people who are trying to stage a coup in the United States right now. But anyway, I did.
So look, the main story is not Pelosi, but it's impossible not to comment on it. So you're basically come out and say, okay, we're gonna unify, while the other side, legislators, forget QAnon, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, are going on Fox News and saying they're stealing the election. It's fraud everywhere, total and utter lies. Everybody go out there and panic. We gotta do something about this election. There's fraud everywhere, right? And our side comes out and goes, I'd like to unify with Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham.
It's amazing.
Okay, no. Can we have any kind of strength? Look, you want to preserve Biden being above the fray and hey, don't worry, I'm gonna bring the country together. That's not the strategy I would use, but at least I understand that strategy. But that's why you have to have high-level surrogates like the Republicans are doing with Cruz and Graham. Send in Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, or you know what? If they don't want to get their hands dirty by actually fighting for us, which is pretty much the standard case, send in someone else. You guys think that Adam Schiff is tough. Anyway, all right, fine, send him in. My God, get out the way, send Rashida Tlaib in. Send Ilhan Omar in, we're gonna straighten this out right away. And have them call it like it is. Every one of these cases that they claimed was fraud has been debunked. The Republicans are liars, and this attempt to drag this out is trying to steal the election, and we are not going to let them do that. The will of the people will be respected. This is a democracy. Anyone who says that Joe Biden shouldn't be president, even though he has won these states, is un-American. See, that would be strong. Of course, the Democrats couldn't possibly do that. But this story is not mainly about Democratic strength or weakness. It's, in my opinion, it's about media weakness. And so they huffed and puffed and talked about how they're gonna stand up to Trump. We have the numbers in. Only Democratic districts are left in Pennsylvania and Nevada. And yes, there's mail-in ballots, there's provisional ballots. I hear the point about provisional ballots in Pennsylvania. I understand that could, some of those, or a good chunk of those, could go to Donald Trump. But there's 100,000 mail-in ballots. Now, you guys want to know what percentage of the mail-in ballots Joe Biden is getting in the state of Pennsylvania? 75%. Oh, what? No, it's going to flip and go in the other direction? That makes no sense at all. But what will Donald Trump say about us? This is how the Republicans got so strong in the first place in this country, with both corporate Democrats and corporate media unwilling to act decisively when the facts are on their side. Super frustrating. Let's go, call it already.
All right, well, as we've talked about over and over again on this show, the Trump campaign is approaching this election with the intention of essentially staging a coup if they lose, and they have lost. And they have a multi-pronged approach in making it happen. One of the ways that Trump has planned ahead, if you can believe that Trump plans ahead, is by appointing Supreme Court justices that could potentially weigh in on the results of the election and give him the edge that he needs. And wouldn't you know it, one of the legal advisors to the Trump campaign said the quiet parts out loud just recently. So if you were delusional enough to think that Trump didn't choose Supreme Court nominees based on how they could possibly help him steal the general election, well, here's a tall glass of, just watch.
We're waiting for the United States Supreme Court, of which the president has nominated 3 justices to step in and do something. And hopefully Amy Coney Barrett will come through and pick it up.
So hopefully Amy Coney Barrett will be able to weigh in and give Donald Trump exactly what he wants. I mean, they can't even hide what their intentions are. That was Harmeet Dillon, who is the co-chair of Lawyers for Trump and is a legal advisor for the Trump campaign.
Okay, I want to explain how absurd her claim was. So they've already brought cases, and every one of those cases has already been resolved. So I'll tell you the only things that have not been resolved. So if they bring cases like, oh, hey, there's not Republican observers in the room. The judge asked them, are there Republican observers? They say yes. Then why'd you bring this case? Well, they're having us stand in the wrong place. Are you standing next to the Democrats? Yes. Okay, so all of that got resolved. So one thing they partly resolved was, in Pennsylvania, the law is if it's postmarked by November 3rd, those votes are supposed to count even if they come in on November 4th, 5th, or 6th, right? So that already went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, it's fine for now. We could reconsider after the election, but for now, yes, count them, okay? So that theoretically could go to the Supreme Court, even though they've already basically ruled against it. So what do they think, that Amy Coney Barrett's gonna come in and go, okay, I'm gonna overrule all of you, and we're gonna go in the opposite direction and not count those. But at this point, think about it, guys. Think about it logically for 1 second. Biden's ahead in Pennsylvania. So if they said, okay, that's it, we're not counting any more votes, who would win? Biden would win. So what's your case? At this point, they actually have to turn around and say, please count the votes that came in after November 3rd. Now you got to change your case in the courts, then bring it to the Supreme Court and say, could you please reverse, could you please rule in our favor, even though we originally argued you shouldn't count those ballots? If you're MAGA, I'm asking you, Biden is ahead in Pennsylvania. If your main claim was don't count any more votes in Pennsylvania, including the ones that come in late, wouldn't then Biden win? I don't know, maybe they just can't understand anything. Maybe they're just incapable of thinking. So that's where we are now. So she goes on Lou Dobbs going, well, Amy Coney Barrett could come in and just say that Trump is president. That's not a thing. The Supreme Court has to have a case, and they have to have a grounds for overturning something, and that could affect the election. By the way, the number of votes that come in after November 3rd is tiny. It couldn't swing the election anyway. They've lost in 3 different ways. It makes no sense at all. And they're like, on the other hand, Amy Coney Barrett, and Lou Dobbs like, yeah, that's it. I don't think they have any idea how our legal system works. They certainly don't know how democracy works. Like, well, if we lose the election, can't we just get one Supreme Court justice, or the Supreme Court justice just give it to us? No, you have to have a plausible reason for them to steal it, like in 2000. You can't not bring a case. You can't say, oh yeah, I know we lost, and I know I need these votes to win, but I don't want you to count them, but I just want you to declare me the winner. But if you don't count them, I would lose. How many times can I say it doesn't make any sense? But they really believe it, and when the Fox audience eats it up, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna win in the Supreme Court, man, by counting and not counting the votes. Got them. Look, one last thing. It's hard not to get frustrated by it. The one thing that not only these last 5 years, but this election with 48% of Americans voting for Donald Trump shows you is half the country doesn't care about logic or facts or anything. They're like, keep your stinking facts to yourself, keep your stinking democracy to yourself. We just want Trump to be in charge. Yeah, President King, who cares? Who cares? Democracy, America, who cares? We shred and despise the idea of a democracy like America, but can you believe Colin Kaepernick knelt during the national anthem? They're a joke, a total and utter joke.
All right, well, let's move on to a little bit of fun. Let's talk about Ilhan Omar. So, Ryan Grimm, all right, so Ryan Grimm from The Intercept had an interview with Representative Ilhan Omar where the topic of this election, of course, came up. And what did she have to say about it? Well, let's take a listen.
So speaking of Trump, he was really convinced that your presence in Minnesota, the fact of your existence was going to drive people in Minnesota to flip the state red.
And one of the reasons we're going to win Minnesota? Ilhan Omar.
He said it basically at every single rally.
Yeah. This woman is crazy. She's a horrible woman who hates our country. That's why I'm going to win Minnesota, because of her.
That didn't happen. And why do you think that is? What do you make of the Minnesota results?
I mean, he effed around and found out, I guess.
It's amazing.
Oh, that's one of the, that gives me life, man. That's one of the greatest political quotes I've ever heard. I guess he effed around and found out. Yes, Ilhan Omar, or I should say, Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar.
But like, this guy referring to her as crazy as he's barricading himself in the White House, refusing to concede, refusing to accept the results of the general election. It is incredible. It really is. But Cenk, luckily we have a little more context of this interview that Ryan Grimm had with Representative Omar. Let's take a listen to more of what she had to say.
I've always said this, you get what you organize for, and we've been massively organizing our state, our district for this turnout. I told my colleagues and counterparts here in our state and in our caucus that the reason so many Republicans were donating and investing in me having a primary challenger was to put a damper on our organizing ability, and that they had this long-term strategy to either wear us out, to rid us of the resources, and to give themselves the chance to win without the machine here in the 5th being fully mobilized.
Right.
And so as we started our primary election, I wanted to make sure every single resource we were using wasn't just for like our primary win, but that it would last throughout the general election.
So there's two parts to that. One is the awesome strength that we've all been thirsty for all of these years. Look, I'm super proud to have co-founded Just Democrats. Ilhan Omar won her race all by herself, the original race. I hope that being part of the Just Democrats helped a little bit. And I know that them being unified, the squad is all Just Democrats, helped a little bit. But the reason I tell you that is because this was the idea that once we have uncorrupted politicians and legislators, that they would actually be strong for their voters. As Shirley Chisholm used to call it, unbought and unbossed. That sounded exactly like unbought and unbossed. And then the second part of it. Now, right now we have corporate Democrats in the House literally crying, oh my God, we got blamed for socialism and these progressives are hurting us in our races. Meanwhile, Ilhan Omar is busy organizing and organizing so effectively that the one swing state that Joe Biden won comfortably was Minnesota. So while the others are talking about, oh, I don't know how to fight Republicans. How would I make my own case? I had to surrender when they used the magic word. Our side is organizing all of the grassroots and all of the volunteers and all of the voters so that we win. Gee, I wonder what side is more effective. But to this day in Washington, right now, I guarantee you after the election, I guarantee it because it's happening, we've reported on it already, that the Democrats are gonna come out and say, we never should have allowed these progressives to say what they said. We're gonna go back to being right wing. It's maddening. And by the way, progressives and ones that are as strong as Ilhan Omar understand that Republicans are not your only opponents. If you want to pass progressive priorities like Medicare for All, Green New Deal, you got to get through the corporate Democrats first. And that's just a fact.
And to your point, Cenk, here is a tweet that I just read that has to do with what you just said. Van Jones and Rick Santorum right now arguing over who really stopped socialism in America, Joe Biden or Donald Trump?
Ay.
Amazing.
Okay, so guys, I'm gonna do it one more time.
Listen, Joe Biden, the Cubans are not into you. They never will be. Just let it go. Let it go, Joe. Let it go, establishment Democrats. Cuban boomers in South Florida are never going to support you.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. It doesn't matter. We told you it didn't matter. We were right as usual. The corporate media and corporate Democrats were wrong. Okay, they said, oh, well, if you pick Biden in the primaries, we'll win Florida because the Cubans will realize that we're not socialists and we're wonderful corporate Democrats. Well, that didn't happen. They called you socialists like they do every single time. We were right, you were wrong. Okay, so now how do you talk about socialism? It's so easy, right? So some corporate anchor comes in and says, oh, is the Democratic Party socialist, right? First of all, with younger people, socialism polls better than capitalism. So for younger voters, all you would have to say is yes, and you would win. Okay, but it's true that older voters vote more. So I'm not saying you need to do that. Okay, so you just turn around and ask the anchor or the Republican, hey, could you explain to me what you think socialism is? Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea. No. But what do you think it means? There's no way they have an answer. They're all completely ignorant. None of them have ever defined it on television. None. Okay. So when they fumble around and can't give an answer, then you say, well, what kind of economy do you think we have? Capitalism. We're capitalist. But what does that mean? Isn't it a reality that we have a mixed economy where some things are public and private? No way, we're capitalists. Really? Well, aren't the police public? They're run by the government. Isn't the fire department run by the public? How about the military? The single largest part of the United States government, the military. That is not private, that is public, isn't it? So then are you a socialist? Because you voted for giant defense bills. You've given all this money to the defense industry and to the Pentagon, which is public. So are you a socialist? Are you a socialist? Are you a socialist? Oh, you're not. Okay, so it's a mixed economy. Then you agree it's a mixed economy. Okay, then let's break it down a little further. You say everything should be private, except you just admitted that everything shouldn't be private. So then we're having a conversation about what should be private and public. And I'm saying not everything should be public. As a democratic socialist, if that's what you call yourself, like Bernie Sanders does, well, then I'm saying health insurance should be public. That's it. Wow, what a big scary socialism. Well, where is health insurance public? Every other developed nation. Are they all socialists? Are they all communists? Are they all North Koreans? No, they're Norwegians. So you don't want people to have guaranteed health insurance. So that's the big difference here, right? So you're saying I'm a big bad socialist who wants to give people health care coverage like they have in every other country. Yeah, I guess. Fatality, right? But nobody ever does it. Instead they go, I'm not a socialist, I'm not, no. It was Biden who protected us from the dirty socialists. It was Biden. And I tell you all this, I don't call myself a socialist. I still call myself, I have a new word for it, democratic capitalist, okay? Capitalism that is restrained by democracy as it was supposed to be. So, but I'm telling you how easy it is to defend the word socialist. None of them have ever done it. They're pathetic. Instead, they run, and then they wonder why elections that should be blowouts are close. And then in fact, in 2016, they lost to an idiot monster like Donald Trump. If you run from your own positions, no voter is going to get energized enough to vote for positions you ran from.
So what are we doing now, Jake?
Oh, okay. I didn't know you were going to kick it to me. Oh, we're past 5 o'clock. I didn't even know that.
It's time to go.
Okay, so Joe Biden was supposed to speak at 5. I got carried away there. That was fun. So he has decided not to speak because the news media has decided that they're too scared of Donald Trump to say facts. You've heard me say
losers.
Yeah. By the way, so
no more. By the way, they all know.
No. Listen. So you're all frustrated. Your tweets, your comments, we read them, etc. Right? We're frustrated. So why don't you support a news network that's got balls? Okay, that actually will give you the news and not worry about what anybody's going to say about it. Oh, hey, you guys are telling the truth, but what if we yell at you? Come at me, bro. Okay, I don't care if you yell at me. Everybody's been yelling at me for 20 straight years. So how do you support us? TYT.com/go. It isn't just about being progressive and being honest about our perspective. It's about being honest about the entirety of the news, having the courage to be honest. TYT.com/go. You guys make that possible, and we love you for doing it. And remember when a CNN anchor said, "We love our audience"? No, don't say that. First of all, they don't. But even if they did, oh, that's not what a newsman says. The newsman says, I am neutral. I don't care about any of the news, and I don't care about you guys. Well, we do things differently. We do care about you, and we fight for change on your behalf. So I'm proud that we started Just Democrats, or I did, and Wolf Pack and Rebellion Pack, by the way, Rebellion Pack's gonna go into those Georgia races and rip those Republican faces off in those candidates politically, okay? So we're gonna tell you what criminals they are. And we're proud of trying to fight for progressives. We're proud of trying to bring you positive change in the world. And we're proud to give you honest news. So TYT.com/go. All right, we love you guys. And obviously if there are any updates, I'll come on for my home office, such as it is, it's about this big, okay? Anyway, with my face up to the camera, and I'll let you know what it is. Much love, I'll see you then.